Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, assalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in, amma ba'du. Very warm welcome to the respectable all the keynote speakers for the 4th ICON-ELT 2023. We have here Dr. Ahmar Mahbub. Good morning, Dr. Ahmar. Nice to see you. Today he is from the University of Sydney, Australia. And then we also have in our conference Dr. Willy Ardian Renandia from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. The Honorable, the Convener of English Education Department, Universitas Islam Malang, Dr. Eko Suhartoyo, the Chairperson of the 4th ICON-ELT 2023, Dr. Kurniasi MA, and then the Honorable, all the participants of ICON-ELT 2023 who have joined on site in Universitas Islam Malang. We have Dr. Hema and Dr. Rika from University Technology Malaysia, and also good morning all the online presenters and also participants who have joined online on Zoom meeting. And then the Honorable, all the faculty members and the dedicated committee members of our conference this morning. Welcome to the second day of International Conference on English Language Teaching 2023, hosted by English Education Department, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Islam Malang. I am Fepti Ismiatun. I'm standing here with a very great honor to welcome you in the second day with more exciting and also inspiring moment with our special keynote speakers. Let me review some series of our agenda, Dr. Ahmar. On August 29, we conducted a workshop session. It's such kind of pre-conference workshop with the speaker, Bapak Farouk Ubaidillah. He explained very detailed and comprehensive about how to make a story into research in the perspective of narrative design. And the following day, yesterday, we had a very tight and also busy agenda, started with the opening ceremony of the conference and then followed by the keynote speaker session with Dr. Muhammad Yunus and Professor Anita Lee from Surabaya, followed by the invited speaker session, and it is ended by the parallel session with the great presenters of our conference. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we have one more keynote speaker session, and we have the two respected keynote speakers. First is Dr. Ahmar Mahbub. Good morning. It's a very pleasure and thank you very much for coming here in Universitas Islam Malang after a rather long journey in the air. Yeah. Thank you very much. We are very honored to have you here in Universitas Islam Malang. And also we have Dr. Willy Ardian Renandia. He has joined with us on Zoom meeting. Good morning. It's always impressive, yeah, to meet Dr. Willy. It is the up 10 meeting, to say in Bahasa Indonesia, pertemuan kesekian kalinya with Pak Willy. We always look forward for your meaningful presentation later after Dr. Ahmar Mahbub. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without any further delay, let's welcome and move forward to the following agenda, which is the first keynote speaker with Dr. Ahmar Mahbub. I think he will present with you all about very meaningful presentation under the topic, the credible approach as subaltern practice, a focus on language education. And of course, the session will be moderated by Dr. Alfan Zuhairi. Yeah, he is a senior lecturer in English Education Department, also as a researcher in the area of language learning strategies. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Ahmar Mahbub with a very big applause.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa syukurillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala ma ba'd. In this very bright mornings, we are very happy to have the presenter, a very prestigious scholar from Sydney University, University of Sydney, Australia. His name is Ahmar Mahbub, the Associate Professor. And thank you for all the audience who participate, either online or on-site here. Okay, the topic here, today's morning here, or this morning, is new things, I think, subordinate. I don't know what does it mean, subordinate. Actually from, abbreviated from credible, actually. So that's why how this very interesting topic. And okay, the credible approach as a subordinate practice, a focus on language education. Okay, topic is very nice, and I think this is a new thing for us. And Pa Mahbub will present very detail about how we implement subordinate or credible approach in subordinate education. And we are especially in how we apply in language education. Okay, without, let me introduce Pa Mahbub, Mr. Professor, Associate Professor Mahbub. Full name is Ahmar Mahbub. He's actually was born in Pakistan and then more than 20 years in Australia. And then on the qualification here, there are 3 master education and 1 doctor philosophy. Yeah. And then master education, higher education, master of art and applied linguistics, and TESOL, and master of art in linguistics in Pakistan. So that's why I think is very genius, very very strong in education. Yeah. He lived in Australia, and then he's very good and then well known in Australia and also for us. So that's why we are invited. So this is very prestigious for us and very merit for us to have Pak Mahbub then. And then the employment here, until now, he is Associate Professor in Department of Linguistics, University of Sydney, Australia. And there are, I don't want to read all then, because it's very long. Let me, the grant here, fellowship, grant, and award. I just want to read the last 2. In 1990, named Australia Research Field Leader English Language and Literature in Australia's Research Magazine. And then in 2023, first Global Fellow Faculty of Education, University of St Andrews, Scotland and UK. And there are many then, their experience and publications. He have 5 books. Yeah. And the last one, under review here, Subordinate Practice. So this is a new thing. Subordinate Practice, a practical guide from London and Rochester. This is very interesting. And then there are the other 4. And then edited books here, there are many then books. Then reference position paper, and then some edited journal, and the last 2001 special issue in World English in Middle East and Northern Africa, and then 2001, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and then reference journal. There are many. So that's why, without further any details, I'm happy to have Mahbub, Ahmar Mahbub as the presenter for today. So welcome, and the time is yours, Mahbub, please.
So much. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
It's great to be here in person. When Farooq invited me to this conference initially,
Then discussion.
so when Farooq invited me initially, he suggested that we do this online. And I said, in today's world, I mean, yes, we're used to online delivery and online conferences. Can you hear me? Okay. No, that's all right. Let's maybe move closer. Is it better now? Better now? Okay. So, yeah, I said to him, it's so much better to actually be at a conference in person, because it isn't only the session, it's meeting the people before the session, it's meeting the people after the session, it's the many small conversations that people have that all become part of the conference. And by doing it just online, we sort of miss out on it. So I'm really glad to be here and to be here in Malang. So let me start off by maybe unpacking some of the terms that I have used in the PowerPoint, in the name, title. So the credible approach, right? The credible approach is something that might be new to many people, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in detail. Now, what is subaltern practice? I'll mention what that I mean by that in a bit. And then, of course, we are going to focus on language education in today's session. Right, and now you will also notice that I have 3 names underneath my presentation. So it's Ahmar Mehboob, which is the name I was given when I was born by my parents. Now, Sunny Boy, Brumby, is when about 3-4 years ago, I was adopted by the Aboriginal people of Australia in a region in called Cape York, which is far north Queensland. And my adopted family, my adopted mom gave me the name Sunny Boy. So that's why I go by Sunny Boy. That's the name I use very often. And Brumby, I chose myself. Do you know what Brumbies are? What is a Brumby? Okay. Brumby, in Australia, there were no horses before the English invaded, right? There were no horses in Australia. So the British brought the horses with them to Australia. And they brought the horses because the horses are needed for work and for transportation, right? So there were work horses. Over a period of time, some of the horses were released into the wild, and other horses ran away, and they became the wild horses of Australia, which are also called Brumby. So Brumby is the wild horse of Australia. So, and just like the wild horses that were brought to Australia to work, and then they ran away, I see myself the same way. I was brought to Australia to work, and I worked, and then I ran away. And so I became Sunny Boy Brumby. Okay. And Prof Nomad is one of the other names that I use in some of my writings. And notice it is not professor, it's just prof. So in a sense, it's making fun of the idea of a professor. So it's Prof Nomad, not professor. And you might have heard people say things like the mad professor. Have you heard about the mad professor? So this is the nomad prof, right? So this is nomad prof. But also, of course, nomad means I live a very nomadic life. I do a lot of my learning and a lot of my teaching outside of university context. So I do a lot of my learning in the bush, in the nature, with common people, not academics. And I also do a lot of teaching in these contexts. So not only teaching within a university or a school context. So that's also part of why I go by Prof Nomad. So in many ways, the credible approach sort of evolved as part of my work as a nomadic academic, right? Moving around, doing things. Now, all of you would have heard the terms reliability, right? In research, reliability and validity, right? We have all learned these words, reliability and validity. Reliability implies that if you get the same result once, you should get the same result again and again and again. So the results are reliable, means that they are consistent over a period of time. Validity implies many different things. One of the meanings of validity is that what you are collecting, the data that you are collecting, is relevant to the questions that you are asking, right? So for any of you who have done research, people who have done PhDs, we're often asked to comment on the reliability and the validity of our research methods, right? Have you done that? Yeah, we all do that. Now, my question is, why do we even care about reliability and validity of something if the project itself does not have any credibility? Credibility, think of credibility as a common word, meaning something you can trust, something that has purpose, something that has a meaning, something that is meaningful, something that is useful, something that is credible, something that is trustworthy, right? So my question is, if a project is not credible, that it is not something that is for the benefit of the people, then why should we worry about reliability and validity? They're not important. They're only important for the research itself, but what about the research? Is the research credible? Now, I will talk about what I mean by credible in a bit more detail later on, and I will also talk about how to actually turn your projects into credible projects, or how do we turn our classrooms into credible classrooms. So it means we have to alter quite a few things and challenge a number of beliefs and norms that have been given to us by previous generations. We have to challenge them and think about them in reflection to our own communities, in thinking about how do we and our students contribute to the betterment of the world around us. What do we actually do, and what do our students do to make our cities and our provinces and our regions more prosperous? So this is quite different from asking how do we train our students to get a job, right? Because getting a job is working for somebody else, whereas when you're thinking about benefiting your community, you're thinking differently. And to do this, we have to, I use the term subaltern. Subaltern is a term that's used in theory as well. It has a long history actually, and it implies that the voice of the people who are disempowered. So typically people who are marginalized, who are disempowered, who are seen as weak, as being the lowest form of the community. So it's the voice of that group of people, because they're not voiceless and they actually can do things if they're permitted and given the resources to do things. So in a sense, the credible approach is a way of reforming things from a perspective of people who, like us, are on the margins. We are in academia, but we're almost always on the margin. We can be English language teachers, but we are seen as non-native speakers of English, right? So we are second-hand citizens as English language teachers. We are second-hand in that researchers, because our qualities are not mapped and matched in certain ways. So to start off, I will share a poem. It's called A Beautiful Tomorrow. Let me read it to you. In the desolation of today, I hang on to the promises of tomorrow, when life will be in harmony and struggles gone. I believe that things will change, and I will fly again over the rainbows, looking down at forests and rivers, spotting wildlife as they enjoy their day. Waiting for tomorrow, I watch videos about nature and read books about wildlife. I imagine the future and think of stuff to bring along. And then I remember yesterday and today, where we pump more oil and burn more coal, cut more forests and mine more gold. And then I wonder how tomorrow will be. How will tomorrow be if today we kill each other and nature too? We build more weapons and borders too. Will tomorrow be beautiful if today we neglect? Right? So the focus, of course, here is if we neglect today in the dream of something in the future, then actually we are not taking actions to realize that beautiful future. We're just letting things happen. And as we've seen in the major environmental problems, social problems, political problems around the world in the last decades, we can see that what we have been doing as academics has not actually impacted the world in a good way. Yeah, individually we might have made careers, we might have had good jobs, and we might have had success as an individual. But if we look at our larger societies and communities, we see that things have actually been going downwards. There are more conflicts, more violence, more environmental destruction, more problems in climate change. None of it is really being tackled. And the question is that something for us to tackle? And as teachers and students, I think, yes, it is. In fact, we are the frontline people. We are the people who should be first step, because we as teachers and as educators can make changes that other people cannot. By reforming education, by making our education something that is meaningful for our community, it's credible for all of us, we will actually can initiate changes that we cannot expect others to do. Why? Because it's not their job. It's our job to create knowledge. It's our job to train our youth, so our students. So it's our responsibility. So what is the credible approach? It's an acronym. It's like reliable, valid, it's credible. So credible is actually an acronym as well. So we can think of it and unpack it in terms of each of the letters of incredible. So C stands for contextually relevant. When we are creating credible projects, we are thinking locally. We're thinking about Malang. We're thinking about your street where you live. We don't have to think abstract. We don't have to think of doing things abroad or in other places. We start from home. Things that are needed in our community, in our streets, in our districts. That's our projects. That's where we start. We think contextually. Contextually relevant, think locally. It responds to practical needs. This is extremely important. It responds to a need that people have in the community. Right? So if there is a need, for example, where in a community farmers don't know how to deal with farm waste in many different ways, and they end up burning the farm waste, which leads to environmental problems, then as teachers and community members, we can come together to figure out what can we do, how can we educate our farmers to create alternative methods which can reduce the impact on the environment. Right? So we're thinking of real problems. We're not thinking of a problem in a book, in a theory. Right? So many of us who have done PhDs and who've been trained in doing research, one of the things we are trained to do is identify a gap in the research. Right? Very often the chapter on literature review requires the students or the candidates to write a chapter based on what is the gap in the literature. Now notice, that might be a gap in the literature, but it's not a real world need. It doesn't necessarily create a change in the real world. And what we're really aiming for through credible approach. Sorry? Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, yes. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I don't typically always do that because I don't always remember my next slide. so if I forget my next slide, please forgive me. Okay. So we're responding to practical needs, not just driven by theory. Of course, we will read the theory to help us with our projects. We're not saying we're not going to read things. We will read things and we will write things, but we are not slaves to the written word. We are not slaves to somebody else's theory. We are creating things that are meaningful in our local context. Third is engages stakeholders. Notice the word I'm using here is stakeholders, not participants, not informants. Because if we are collecting data in a traditional approach, we think of our people who give us data as just participants, as informants. We don't see them as stakeholders in the kind of problem that we are trying to address. We only collect the information from them, and in return, they often get nothing. Right? We use their data and we write our dissertations, we write our publications, we get promotions, we get whatever. But the people who helped us collect the data, their lives have not changed at all. They're exactly where they were. So the question is, why are we doing the research we are doing when nobody's life is actually impacted? Can we not think about doing research in a different way that is not collecting data, but thinking of people who we work with as stakeholders? So in the example of the farm burning, the farmers, their families, the community are all stakeholders because we all live together in the same environment. We are all stakeholders in the same project. So it's not a question of just getting data. So you see them as equals rather than as you're above and they are below. Because that's very often the case which researchers develop. They think of themselves as higher up because they're collecting data and analyzing it. Whereas the credible approach, one makes us more humble and in relation, keeps us related to the people around us. It draws on understanding of local knowledge and practices. Pay attention to beliefs, practices, and expressions of the locals. Because if we are going to work in a community with the stakeholders, we have to be really connected with them. We need to know what they like, what they think, how they feel, what they know, right? How they do things. Because our work has to be aligned with it. As opposed to if I come from abroad and tell you what to do, then you might resist it. You might say, wait a second, that's not how we do things here. Things haven't grown organically. We haven't changed things organically with our stakeholders. So very often, a lot of these, brought in training programs and changes don't actually create the results that we are hoping for. And the reason often is because we don't have stakeholders. At the same time as we are learning from the local, we are also informed by diverse approaches and experiences. And when I say this, I want to highlight, I'm not just talking about the global north or the Western countries. It's very often the case that when we are doing our research, we look at the top publishers from the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and those are the places that we draw our information from. There really is no need to do that. Because knowledge is infinite, which means everything has its own knowledge. And we need to understand it from that perspective. There is no reason to accept certain knowledge as to be legitimate and other knowledge to be illegitimate. There is no such thing as illegitimate knowledge. Of course, we can talk about how certain types of knowledge have more application than others. We can do that. We can talk about how certain knowledge explain certain things and not explain other things. We can do that. But we can't rank knowledge because knowledge is infinite. And anything that is infinite cannot have an internal hierarchy. If you let this sink, you will realize this has a lot of implications. For example, we all have journal rankings. We all have university rankings. We have academic rankings. All of these rankings. Notice they're ranking knowledge when knowledge itself cannot be ranked. So there are tricks in the play which allow these things to happen. And our job as academics and thinkers, as researchers, is to identify how these things work and to create alternatives for our own students and communities in ways that can bypass these problems. Next is benefit local communities. I think I've said this many times, but I'm going to keep saying it again and again and again. If the project does not benefit somebody, then why are we doing it? Imagine how many years a person spends on their PhD, and they're getting to a PhD. They start from undergraduate, they do a postgraduate, they do a PhD. They've spent 6 years, 7 years of their lives focused on trying to achieve a PhD. And at the end of the PhD, the only person who benefits is the student, the candidate, because they have a PhD. Nobody else does. If that's the case, then all of the human resources that we are putting into these research projects are essentially a waste of our time. Why are they a waste of our time? Because they lead to no benefits. Our communities continue to suffer. Our people still stay in poverty. We still have basic problems in our communities. And yet we think that we have achieved research excellence. We can't. We have to think about benefits. So if there is no benefit, the project is not credible. And if a project is not credible, I am not even concerned about reliability and validity, because they are secondary. The first thing is validity. Does it have a benefit? Now, if you do all of this, guess what you will be doing? You will be leading the field and discipline already, because you're contributing to doing things in a way that have not been done before. You're creating not just knowledge, you're creating practice. And through practice, you create knowledge, right? So this is something that people have debated a lot, many times over decades. What comes first, theory or practice? The answer really is practice. Theory is an abstraction from the practice. If there is no practice, the theory is useless. It doesn't explain anything. So theory is strong if it is based on practice. And if the practice is good, if the practice has benefits, if the practice has made changes, then the theory that comes out of that practice is also going to be useful. So theory comes later, not first. First is the practice, creating the resources, creating the economies, creating things. Now, of course, all of this has to be done through ethically, right? We have to be very ethical in what we are doing. And when I say ethics, I'm using a very abstract concept. Now, I'm not talking about consent forms. Consent forms are not ethical necessarily. They're just disguising ethics. It's a legal framework. It has little to do with ethics. Let me give you an example. In Indonesia, there are how many languages? Thousands of languages, right? Hundreds of languages. Hundreds of languages, right? Hundreds of languages. Of those languages, there are many languages that have already died or are dying out, right? So if you think about the linguists, my colleagues and anthropologists who go into the communities to document the language from informants, they go there, they collect the data, they write their dissertations, they write a grammar of X language or Y language, and then they leave. And guess what? The people who speak the language are still disempowered. Their language is still lost. So if their language is still lost, what is the ethical basis of doing the documentation? Right? There is none. But we create all of these things because we have legal frameworks and we work through things in a certain way. But we stop and pause and we ask bigger questions like, who is benefiting from this research? Right? Is it only the researcher who's benefiting? Or is it the people, the stakeholders? If it's only the researcher that's benefiting, then I would say the research is unethical. It needs to benefit everybody. Because if we all grow together, we grow together. If only one person tries to grow, then the rest of the community stay where it is. So these are some of the reasons that drove me into talking about subaltern practice, about trying to turn this into a more practical approach. So because the credible research is a brick framework. It's filled with good ideas. But how do you actually take this approach and turn it into something that you can do in your classrooms? Right? Because we have to teach in our classrooms. How do we actually transfer or transform this approach into classroom practice and into pedagogy? Now, that's something that I've been working on for a number of years now with my own students, because of course, when you start doing something new, it's a sharp learning curve. And there's a lot of things that we have to learn as we go through the process. So what I can do today is share some of the examples and some of the things that I do with my students and some of the resources that we have created so far. And then I can, I can let you have a look at them. And then we can think about how you can develop your own projects, right? As long as it's creating a benefit, it's working with the stakeholders, you can do anything. In some of my writings on the credible approach, I say that you don't even need to have any literacy. You can be an 85-year-old grandmother who has never gone to school, and you can still create a credible project. Because credibility is about doing things. It's not trying to demonstrate or show what you have read. You're not showing off that you have read, X philosopher and Y philosopher, and then you can quote from them. That's not the purpose. That's not the goal. The goal is to create benefits, and anybody can do that. So to do credible research, I talk about what we call positive discourse analysis. So most of you in this room or online would have already been introduced to critical discourse analysis, CDA. CDA is very, very popular. A lot of people use it, not just in applied linguistics, but also in economics and other disciplines. Now, what does CDA do? CDA collects some sort of a discourse data, whether it's newspaper articles or conversations or interviews or whatever it might be, right? It collects a set of texts and it analyzes those texts to see where the power is and where the problems are. Right? That's typically what CDA work does. And very often, that's where it ends. So for example, somebody can do a CDA analysis of the representation of women in Indonesian media. Right? And they can look at how they're represented and look at all the various factors, and that's it. So what typically happens, the end result of a CDA is a description of the problem, and sometimes a description of the reasons for the problem. But that's it. In many ways, as readers of that research or as producers of that research, it leaves us really frustrated. It leads to frustration because we can see the problems, but we can't do anything to change it. We know where the problems are, but we can't change it. So if we can't make the change, then the CDA study only leads to our frustration, to our depression, our anger, all of those things. We can say things, we can talk a lot about these things, but we can't change anything. So the fundamental thing about positive discourse analysis is it's driven to promote change. The study of the problem is not the goal. It is creating the change that is the goal. To create and promote empowerment and social change. That is what we want. Not just CDA. What we're trying to do is what we call PDA, positive discourse analysis. Now, PDA can be done in a narrow way, which is focused on language, using SFL, for example, as a theory of language. Or it could be broad, which is working with all our sensory systems. So sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, all of it, working across our sensory systems. So they're done quite differently. I choose the second one. And then PDA can be carried out both to examine things and to design things. The second part is very important. We analyze good examples. We analyze examples of success stories. We learn how those success stories were achieved. And then we take those principles and we create our own project. And we learn from success. So when we learn from success, we have more chances of being successful. And that is the key thing. Learn from successful stories, analyze successful things, not problems. CDA focuses on problems, problems, problems. Here we are looking at solutions. How are good things achieved? And looking at good things, analyzing how that is achieved. What is done to achieve that success? And learning from those strategies and then using those strategies in our own project. Because learning from success will help us achieve success. Learning from frustration is only going to lead to depression. Okay. So if you want to, there's a list here which is an annotated bibliography for PDA analysis. I'll just show this to you. You can download it yourself later on. So positive discourse analysis and annotated bibliography. As it's an annotated bibliography, it's designed to introduce you to the discipline. It introduces you to some of the key texts and what is happening within the field. So on education and literacy, in relation to eco-linguistics, which is very relevant to our contexts, in relation to media discourse, and in relation to political discourse, and in relation to subaltern linguistics and the credible approach. So the annotated bibliography will walk you through some of the key literature in this area and introduces you to the readings. Okay? And you can follow up there yourself. All right. So going back then. Oh. So how do we do this? How do we actually carry out a credible project? How do we actually do this stuff? Step number 1, identify an issue in your local context that you would like to focus on. Something that you can achieve. Remember, we want to set goals for ourselves that are doable, that are achievable. Of course, they have to be credible, but there are also things that we can do within the resources that we have. Right? There are many things that we might want to do, but we can't achieve them because we don't have access to be able to do it. So we have to be realistic in learning and developing the targets for our projects. Of course, once we learn how to do this and we do it again and again and again, because of our experience and expertise, we can tackle bigger and larger and more complex problems. But typically, I suggest starting from relatively easier problems. Because any time we are trying to make a change in the world, we are actually trying to influence other people to change their behavior and beliefs and practices. Right? That is one of the hardest things to do. So for example, we know, for example, that sugar consumption and using too much sugar, especially in childhood, can lead to premature death because it leads to dental problems, it leads to cardiovascular problems, heart problems. Sugar does. If you consume a lot of sugar in your childhood, that's what's going to happen when you're in your 30s and 40s. It's predictable. And yet, making children stop eating so much sugar is a very hard thing to do. Right? So what we have to then do, let's say if the problem that we identify is that we've got people in our community, young people in our community, children in our community, who are eating a lot of candy, who are drinking a lot of soda, who are eating a lot of products with sugar and bad nutrients, then we need to change that. How can we do that? Now that's a very difficult thing to do. Now at the same time, if we break it up and make it more piecemeal in terms of doing it within our own home or family, it might become more manageable. If we are teaching in a school, maybe in our own classroom we can do it. We can create those sort of interventions. That might be all we can do. But of course, we're learning how to do things. Learning how to do it, identifying a local issue, and then figuring out how to address it. Now, in doing this kind of credible work, it's extremely important that we talk about our projects with our friends, our colleagues, our students, our families, people that you know otherwise, anybody. You know, we're not restricted to just literature review based on academic sources. That comes later. First is our understanding of the problem. Who can better help you understand a problem in your community other than the people who live in the community? Because they know that problem very well. They have been experiencing it and living through it for a long time. So talking to them, getting their ideas, getting their suggestions. Remember, we have got stakeholders, not participants. So we have a different way of approaching this. Then we have to look at what have people done already. What have people done to address this kind of issue? I'm sure most of these issues, I just gave you the example of sugar. Many people have been trying to address that problem in many parts of the world. So we're going to try to identify projects and examples which have been success stories, which have made an impact. And we're going to analyze those for our PDA because they will tell us what we can do. And reading from a range of sources, right? But not restricted, which includes magazines, newspapers, social media, academic journals, book. Notice academic journals is just one of the things. It's not the only thing. Because yes, academic journals can have their ranking and things, but to get published there, you have to conform to a lot of things already. If you don't conform to the genre, if you don't conform to the way that the journal operates, then your paper will not be published. Right? So there are many other places where people who have diverse opinions also publish. We need to explore all of those options as well. Okay? And in multiple languages. There is no reason to restrict our reading to English-based academic publications. Right? There is a lot of literature in Bahasa in Indonesia. Right? Look at that literature. It may not again be always academic journals, but there might be other forms of writings. newspapers, magazines, conference talks, all about these other things. Include those as part of your literature review, because there might be things you can learn from there, right? We want to include all of that. And then identify examples of successful projects that have achieved their goals, and then identify what they are, and then create your own. So you will notice there's a constant, this thing. Look for success stories. Look for people who are doing the right work. Look at the publications that are demonstrating this. Look for success stories in the area that you want to address and learn from that. Then we do carry out a positive discourse analysis. What, as we just said, positive discourse analysis is trying to analyze how good things work, how successful things achieve success. So we're learning how to do that. Again, you can do it in many different ways. You can use linguistics, but you don't have to. You can use it, you can use whatever language you're using. It doesn't even have to be English. And then, based on what you have learned, design your material on what you have learned from your PDA and other sources, and get feedback in multiple forms from diverse sources, right? The more diverse the feedback that you get means the more you will be able to better revise your work. And the more you revise your work in response to good feedback and diverse feedback, the more successful your outcomes will be. And then you implement your project, and then you document what you did. Notice the writing here comes quite late. You do your project, and then once you have done the project, guess what? The writing becomes really easy. Typically, students find doing research writing difficult, right? If you ask them to write an article review or ask them to write a research paper or a literature review or something, they find it very difficult to write. Because very often it's abstract. It's things that they're reading about and trying to take that reading in a different language and turn it into something they understand and then write to you in English again. So there's a huge element of language, of course, but it's also because it's all based on abstract knowledge. What I have noticed with my students that when they write PDA-based or credible projects, they do it really well. And they do it relatively easily. Why? Because they're writing not based on reading, they're writing based on having done. Right? When you have done something, it's easier for you to write about it. When you have created a resource, you can tell us how you created it, because you're describing what you have done, as opposed to doing a literature review where you haven't done anything. You have just read other people's literature, and you're trying to synthesize it, which makes it a very difficult task. But if you turn it around and you base it on practice, then the writing is easy, because the writing is responding to your own actions. You know what you did. You know why you did it. You know how you did it. That's all you're telling us. And because you're telling us what you have done, it's easy to write, and often students get good grades, which is a good thing. Right? And then, of course, this documentation can be shared at conferences, it can be shared in publications, and that's where we're trying to create new places where we can publish credible projects. So create a space within the academic world to create new types of writings. Because we need to create new types of genres. Because a genre restricts us in what we can do or not do. Right? So if you think of TESOL Quarterly or Journal of Applied Linguistics or any journal, you can only publish in it if you follow the procedures of the journal. If you don't follow them, you can't get published. So what, of course, it means that we need to open up those genres, create new spaces, create more spaces, which we are doing, and that will take a bit of time to happen. So this is what we do in Credible Project, right? Of course, you're sharing your project, your analysis with others through communities, through doing the work, and then people will see your work if they see evidence of the change, If they see evidence of success, then people will already notice that you're doing something unique because they can observe things. And then keep doing it, right? The whole idea of learning to do credible projects is we don't just do it once and then it's over. We keep doing it. And we're doing it at many iterations. We keep expanding it. We keep making it better and better and better because things need improvement over time. Right? Again, think about a traditional research paper. A person writes a research paper and publishes it, and then it's done. Then they go on to something else. Whereas the whole idea of doing credible projects is you're committed to a social change, which means that you are committed to keep on working on it. And the more you spend time on it, the more resources are built, the better it gets. Any questions at this point in time? Before I move gears? Yeah. No, just a quick question before I moved on.
Yes, Basil, would you please ask a question? Short questions.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, welcome to Indonesia, Prof. Mahbub. Yeah, the first time after I follow your presentation, I think it's very inspiring. You begin with a nice poem, I think. Yeah, it is about the peace. I think I feel a piece of your poems. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I have several questions actually after you present that. The first one is the first point when you present your acronym, credible. C is very interesting point, I think. Think locally. It reminds me when Lambert and Gardner around 1970s conducted research in Canada. He conducted research in Canada on motivation in learning, language learning. And it's very local. The research was conducted to immigrant group, just a few people. And finally, they promoted or they concluded there are two motivational factors way to learn English. Integrative motivation and I forgot another one. But finally, this concept is adopted by the whole world currently. So from local to global, I think, I can say that. That's why your point, C point, is very interesting for us, for researchers, to think something inside our community. Yeah, as a teacher, for example, we can start doing research from the classroom, for example. It remind me one of the book probably written by maybe your colleague, Anne Burns from Australia. Teachers theorizing. The topic is teachers theorizing. Teacher can create theory from the practices, as you explained that, from the classrooms. So classroom is a rich site for theories making or for theories generating. So I think this, it reminds me a lot after your presentation. One question now, about writing after we conduct project or we conduct research and then we come to publication. Yeah, you, what do you call? You recommend us to not say focus on or to come to mainstream to Western thought or Western references. But today it seems there is kind of ideology of writing. I mean, political of writing. If we write for publication, for example, we are supposed to adopt what we call Western theories. It seems that we are handcuffed by the assumption or by, we are colonized. Our freedom of academic freedoms. Yeah, so there is sometimes it is common to the academic life that when we want to publish in good journals, we have to adopt the journal mostly from Elsevier, for example, from Scopus Index journals, and it's kind of colonialization of writing. Maybe it is kind of, there is ideology of writing hidden there. I don't know. What do you think about it, Prof. Mahbub? Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the question and the comment. You're absolutely right. And that's part of the reason why I'm developing the credible approach and the subaltern practice, is to actually create the space for alternatives to rise, to create the space for us to become decolonized, because our knowledge is colonized. I don't, in some of my writings, I'm very explicit in saying that colonization has never ended. It has not ended. All it has changed is the Europeans played a magic trick why they say abracadabra doom, and here should stick, you become independent. No, you're not. Our economy is not independent. Our education is not independent. Our knowledge is not independent. We're not independent, right? We're constantly being shaped by the colonial forces. So the approach, subaltern approach, the credible approach, is a way to help us to become decolonized, to abandon those kind of ways of writing. So I actually have a couple of books in the press now with major publishers where I have no references, right? So yes, and it's been peer reviewed and everything. So it can be done. It's not easy, but it can be done, and I think we need to do more and more of it. Our journals, if they're delivering high quality practical suggestions and solutions, it will become a Scopus indexed, because Scopus itself doesn't care. It's only looking at certain measures, right? But if we don't realize that we need to create our own alternatives and empower them, and we stay trapped in trying to publish in elite journals, then you are absolutely right. We are going to stay colonized, and we are actually going to colonize our own students and teach them to do things that we know don't help. The only thing it helps is the academic who will get published and maybe get a promotion. In certain countries, you even get cash, right? If you publish a paper, the university will give you cash money, right? So it's an advantage for the researcher, but nobody else, right? It actually feeds the greed kind of mentality, that individualistic, greed-driven mentality that is the driving force behind colonization, right? It actually enables it. So this is why I talk about the credible approach and subaltern practice, because it's a countermeasure. And again, if the more we do it, the more we engage in it, it will start creating the changes at the local level. It will create the space for our students. Now, I'll share with you a book that I've released. This one is not published. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So again, if you look at it, it's on academia. It's called Subaltern Practice, a Practical Guide. The book has 3 sections. Section 1 is the more sort of theory of how to do it. In a sense, it gives you more details about how do you actually do this work, right? So it goes step by step and things like that. Section 2 are examples of student projects from, sorry, where is it? So from section 2, chapter 5 to chapter 15, things like reducing sugar intake, garbage sorting, bins for the future, hand washing, choose to reuse, supporting online learning, promoting the learning of Tai Ching dialect, know your healthcare, creating awareness for sex education, a guide for dealing with menstruation, rental issues. You can see there's a whole range of social political issues, social issues that students feel are problems for themselves, and they work to address these problems. So these are all examples from language classrooms. So you can see how students have done this, not just looking at the theory, but also looking at what are the examples. And there are more examples on academia as well. And there are more examples that are in the production mode at the moment. And then the section 3 is only one chapter. It's called Moving Forward with Education, which is a strong critique of coloniality enabling academia, and also ways of decolonizing it. And it ends with 3 examples from Pakistan, so a very different context of how it can be applied in different contexts. So I'll give you a few more examples. So this is one. Here's an example of something I organized with colleagues in Malaysia and with University of Malaya. It was a language travels program. The goal of the program was to help an endangered language to be able to survive. So we didn't do a typical documentary analysis. What we did was we helped them to create an economy. So by bringing in tourists, where their tourists stay in the local community, in the houses, in the local hotels, they eat the local food, they're generating an economy for the local community in different ways. And then these people, the goal of these people is not to sightsee, it's to learn a language, a song from the community language. It engages children as teachers. So I'll show you this here. So the teachers are here, the students. You know it too. Yep. Okay, so I'll stop playing the video. Okay. So the key thing here I wanted to show you is, of course, the children of the community are the teachers of their language. Now, some of these children, before they participated in the program, they were performing really poorly in a school. They were either failing or not doing very well. But after engaging in this project, all of these school students started doing really well. Why? Because from being treated as students who don't know, they became the teachers who are the experts. So their confidence level shifted. And as their confidence level shifted, where they could see themselves as teachers for adults and adults who are coming from different parts of the world, they felt so much more empowered. And the stress that they had developed from their school environment changed. So it actually created that change for the students. It also created an economy. It generated a lot of money for the community. And after they had learned how to do this once with FLC, the community is doing it again and again and again. So they can run this program independent of University of Malaya, independent of FLC, and they can just run their own language travels, right? Because they know how to do it now. And in time, what we have been able to do is we have worked with them and with University of Malaya to create a trilingual resource book. All the artwork in these books are made by the students, by the children of the community. And notice the book is trilingual. So there is the Kristang, which is the Malacca Portuguese. There is the Bahasa Malay, which is, I guess you guys can read as well. And then there is the English version. So the whole book takes a trilingual approach. And by doing that, it creates a language learning resource for the community and for people around the community, right? And now once you create the resource has a life of its own. It allows children to learn this language again and again and again, right? So instead of complaining that we have no resources to teach a language, guess what? We can create them. We can create the resources, because once the resources are created, they exist. Okay. And let me just give you one more quick example, and then I will end it there. This is about the Ribbit Pond. Now, you can access the Ribbit Pond here. So it's on the FLC website, Ribbit Pond, and you can choose between so many different languages. So this project was done by my master's student as part of his master's dissertation. So he created this story, this Indonesian is there, and then let's put in whatever language you want. Serbian. You can bypass English if you want to, and then the book will present itself in Bahasa and in Serbian. So the whole book is now in these two languages. I'll put English here just for myself. So you can see there's the Indonesian and there's the English. Last spring, a group of croc frogs arrived at the Ribbit Pond. They came from faraway land, from mountains and beyond. They traveled day, they traveled night. In the rain, in the sun. Until they finally found a new home at the Ribbit Pond. Right, and the story goes on. Now notice the student wrote this storybook as part of his master's project. He worked with an artist to create all the artwork. Now all the artwork, all the writing is very theoretically informed. It's not just, it didn't just develop by itself. There is a lot of multimodal theory that is applied in the development of the image and the text and the relationship between the two. But as a product that you receive, which is the storybook, it doesn't matter to you. Right? So that work goes in the development of the material. It's all the PDA work that we did. Because that PDA work helped us to create this book, which became so popular that it's now translated into 26, and I have 4 more translations and I have to upload. Right? So the people want it. Now, once this book is ready, what we can also do is we can create teaching ideas around it. So we can see there's a book called Learning Vietnamese with the Ribbit Pond. It's written by a Vietnamese student and somebody else, another colleague. Learning Chinese with the Ribbit Pond. So then you can use this resource to create additional resources, to create teaching learning resources. All of this happening through a credible lens, right? Through a lens to create the material that we need to. So through this, I hope I've shown you what one credible approach is, but also sort of demonstrated through examples how it can be done and what can be done. Again, what we have covered today is just a tip of the iceberg. You know, we can spend weeks doing this and working through these projects. In fact, that's what I do in my teaching. I teach my postgraduate program students, I teach them how to create these projects again and again and again. Thank you. I will stop here and ask you questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Mahbub. Then it's very great presentations. Then starting from philosophical things and then down to earth, and we can more practical. Then this. Okay, I invite the questions. One from the audience here on site, and then. Would you please, for the online audience, please write down on the chat box. Okay, I start from the audience here then. Would you please raise your hand? Okay, Pak Imam first. Very short questions, because we have only 10 minutes more then.
Pak Mahbub, thank you very much. I live in Singosari now. Singosari is developing to be a special economic zone, one of the biggest digital industry set up by Indonesian government, launched 3 years ago. But the problem is the community is not ready yet. King College London had a meeting with Unisma yesterday to set up King College London in that area and ready in 2025. However, still, the community are many villagers. They do not have proper education, no foreign language at all. And now I and my wife are working on providing education for English for youth, preparing for them and then giving foreign languages, because the project is having collaboration with Western Australia, Singapore, and then King College London. It's so interesting, the term you mentioned about the credible. The first I thought it was like credible something, but it's basically useful for giving social impact for the purpose of empowerment, community empowerment, because I do agree that there are so many people are still working, middle, lower income family, and they need something, not just theory. So they need something that can empower themselves to be healthier, to be more prosper and then happier than the other people. So in that case, then our research is trying to inform best practices that what we did, so that can inspire other people to do the same thing. Is that the substance of publication in that regard? Thank you so much.
Yeah, in terms of the write-up, yes, it is to share what the problem was, what did you do in order to address it, and how did it what did it result in, so that we can learn from other successful projects. That's absolutely the goal. So it's not to extend theory, but to extend practice.
Thank you. The second question is from Pa Azam. Would you please to ask short question and clear?
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for your incredible presentation, Dr. Mahbub. So actually I have one question. So can we implement this incredible research for undergraduate students? Because we have such a presumption that undergraduate students are still learning to do the research. So I think it's okay for their level, for undergraduate level, do not have like empowerment or impact for their research. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think you know it is would be very useful to introduce it at an undergraduate level, especially because it can empower the students in realizing what they can do, as opposed to a lot of times the way that our undergraduate university education is structured. Students feel that they can't actually do things, because they can't understand the literature, they can't do the readings, they can't always do the assignments. So they feel disempowered through the education process. They don't really see how their studies are creating a meaningful change. So in a sense, they go through the structures, they go through and pass all the exams, and they graduate, and then they go look for jobs, right? If we can actually help them at that undergraduate level to give them confidence in what they can actually achieve and what they can do, how they can create economies that don't exist, how they can create material that is needed, and through that creating also an economy for themselves. We can actually change the very ways in which they think and what they do, where their outcomes are not about getting a job to work for somebody else, but their outcome is to graduate to create their own economy and be their own boss, and in fact generate jobs for other people, but focused on the community. So actually, yes, it can hugely influence undergraduate education. And since it doesn't require people to have expertise in English, it can actually work through mother tongues as well, which means students feel much more empowered in what they're doing. They're not handicapped by a second language or a foreign language. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azam. We have 4 minutes. If one more very short question, Pak Julia. Maybe other, but you have already asked a question. Okay, Pak Jul, please.
Thanks a lot, Pak Mahbub, for the nice presentation about Nonai Bobo. Yeah. The teachers, I mean the student become a teacher, the children become teachers of local language. Let me inform you that we have around 726 languages, local languages. And it needs to be revitalized, I think. Yeah. And one of the revitalization is using that programs, students or children become teachers to foreigners. I think it can generate economic or income, for example. I think it's very interesting. Let me compare with one program held by American. Yeah, I used to work in language revitalization in US for about 1.5 years. Yeah, it is called Language Documentation Center. Yeah, we try to document a language, a traditional language, the local language around the globe. Yeah, we can see in, online, I think, we document almost the dying languages, the language in almost extinct. So, for example, the local language in Java, we document in one format. We write the song in that language, and we translate to another language. So this is one of the model. But your model is much more agentive, I think. Yeah, in terms of education, I think it's much inspiring to me, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to know more about that program. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, because we have a lot of time, I think Mahbub have already presented very inspiring things then for us to be as a teacher then, starting from the concept of creebles and then how we have to do something that's useful for the community, not just for academic, just should be practical. From practical, we create a theory, a new practical and theory, practical and so on. So that's why I think this concept is relevant to our government policy then, to research. Research should be down to earth, not just a theory. It should be useful for the community. That's a very interesting thing. Thank you very much for Pak Ahmad Mahbub, very inspiring and very interesting and amazing presentation, and the content is very useful for us to be as a teacher then. One more then, would you please give very great applause to Pak Mahbub Ahmad.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I close my statement. Sorry for my mistakes, and for the next agenda or next topics will be moderate, as the moderator is Pak Imam. Would you please to come forward, Pak Imam Wahyudi, Dr. Imam Wahyudi. Thank you, Pak Mahbub.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, before coming to the second keynote speaker, who is moderated by Bapak Dr. Imam Karimullah, let's have giving the token of appreciation for Dr. Ahmad Mahbub. Yes, Pak Eko Soehartoyo as the convener and also Ibu Dr. Kurniasi as the chairperson of ICON-ELT to please come forward to give the certificate or the token of appreciation for Dr. Ahmad Mahbub. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad, for your contribution and also participations in supporting our dynamic ICON-ELT 2023. Okay, so the certificate is given by the chairperson, Dr. Kurniasi, to our esteemed speaker today. Thank you very much, and please kindly give the round of applause for Dr. Ahmad Mahbub. Okay, so we have another souvenir from our department given by the convener of English Education Department. Okay, such kind of inspiring discussion with Pak Ahmad. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pak Dr. Ahmad Mahbub. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned in our conference on the second day because we still have another meaningful and inspiring keynote speaker session with Dr. Willy Ardian Renandia. This is the 18th meeting with him. Sudah kesekian kalinya, we ICON-ELT invited Dr. Willy to be the keynote speakers. It's like he is the icon of ICON-ELT. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Willy Ardian Renandia for the fourth keynote speaker in the last day of our conference. And of course, this session will be moderated by Bapak Dr. Imam Karimullah, MA. Okay, so let's join the conference with Pak Imam as the moderator. Okay, Pak Imam, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Very good morning to all participants and especially our keynote speaker, Dr. Willy Renandia. I would like to share a very short introduction about Dr. Willy Renandia. We almost know him already, that he is principal lecturer from National Institute of Education, Singapore. He graduated from PhD from University of Wisconsin, and then his MA from University of Hawaii, USA, and his bachelor from Sanata Dharma, Yogyakarta. He has a very, very extensive experiences, especially in the area of integration of technology for English language teaching. And there are so many publications that he has, and some aspect of courses that he provided. He's providing is on the area of reading, writing, listening, language acquisition, language teaching methodology, curriculum design and development. And as you can see in the slide that I am sharing, he also has very global experiences from Thailand, Japan, and many research projects he received from many international grants from Singapore, and of course very active English language scholars in the world. And publication also, in journal publication, and author of many books in the area of TESOL, in the area of ELT. The recent book that he has written is in the area of cooperative learning in language education and student-centered cooperative learning. That's why our today's topic will be discussing about the aspect of student-centered pedagogy and how to integrate the technology so that we have the activity to construct and co-construct knowledge, of course, through the guidance of skillful and effective teacher. And he will be also sharing the aspect of project-based and discovery learning and how the integration of technology in our classroom. In Indonesian context, project-based learning, problem-based learning, discovery learning becoming major trends in our new curriculum in Indonesia. And I believe it is not only in Indonesia, internationally, student-centered learning, project-based learning, discovery learning, and now the integration of technology, information communication technology in English language teaching class in nowadays context is a very, very crucial. And Dr. Willy Renandia will discuss about that one. Please give a round of applause for Dr. Willy Renandia. So I will give him time for about 60 minutes, and we will have a question and answer for about 20 to maybe 25 minutes. Time is yours, Dr. Willy Renandia.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. 60 minutes is a bit long for me. I usually speak for about 15 or 20 minutes in the classroom. And then what happens afterwards is for the students to tell me, to discuss with me what they have learned together with me. So I'll try to do my best today not to speak for too long. I think talking is easy, listening is not easy. I think you have just listened to my friend from Australia, Pak Ahmar Mahbub, I think it's not easy to listen. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to listen to people talking, giving a presentation for 1 hour or 90 minutes. And my presentation is going to be very practical. I am a simple person. I do a lot of teaching in the classroom. I work with students. My focus mostly is how I can help my students become better, competent users of English. I think all of us here are English teachers, so I think you can relate to what I'll be sharing with you in a very interesting and also interactive manner. And today, Ibu Nikmah, Ibu Duriatun Nikmah is going to be with me and we'll be co-sharing the presentation together. Yeah, Ibu, how do you call your name? Ibu Nikmah or Ibu Yatun? Yatun. Nikmah? Zuri. Ibu Zuri. Your microphone is off, Ibu. Can you turn on the microphone?
Okay, yes.
That's good, yes. So how do people call you? Ibu yang berduri?
Call me Ibu Ria.
Oh, Ibu Ria, that's better. Yeah, I was about to call you Ibu Duri. Ibu yang berduri. That is a bit tricky. So Ibu Ria. Okay, thank you so much, Ibu Ria. Ladies and gentlemen, before I begin, I have some very useful information for you. This is a picture of my university, and it's Nanyang Technological University, and I belong to the School of Education, Fakultas Pendidikan, yang namanya adalah National Institute of Education. The good thing for you to know is that this is one university in Singapore that is LPDP approved and also BPI approved. BPI is a new scholarship program for people in education in Indonesia. Singkatan dari apa ya Bu ya? BPI adalah Beasiswa Pendidikan Indonesia. Ya, khusus beasiswa untuk Bapak Ibu yang if you are in education, if you are a teacher, if you are a university lecturer, I think you can apply for this Indonesian government scholarship. And what I have here are 4 people who are currently studying at NIE. Ibu Endah, the first one, is from Malang. And then the second one is Ibu Lili from Departemen Keuangan Jakarta. And then the next person is a senior lecturer from also, Ibu Maria Hidayati. And the last person is from UNJ, Universitas Jakarta, Ibu Puspita. Ibu Puspita is doing mathematics education. Ibu Maria is doing English language education. Ibu Lili, curriculum and instruction. And Ibu Endah is in the area of humanities. I think she is now researching history, sejarah ya. Beliau adalah seorang ahli di bidang sejarah. So if you are thinking of studying overseas, I think you might want to consider NIE. It's very near. It's one of the better universities, if you like, in Asia, if not in the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, today my topic is this: the future of ELT, and in particular, I will be focusing on how we can leverage on technology, how we can make use of technology. But my presentation is not about specific technological tools that you may be using now or you may be using in the future, but I am going to look at technology in relation to pedagogy. I think it's very important for us to remember that technology is a tool. Technology doesn't make your lesson better, but it is you who know about pedagogy, you who know about technology can make your teaching better, and you can help your students to learn much more in your classroom. Let me start by asking you a few questions for us to consider, and the answer to this question is just yes or no, very easy. Buria, first off, make sure your microphone is on throughout. I'm going to give you a quiz, Iburia. Okay, quiz number 1 is this, very simple. You just say yes or no. Make sure your microphone is on. Your audio is on.
Yes.
Yes, very good, yes. Technology is here to stay for years to come, yes?
Yes.
Very good. Yes, yes. Whether you like it or not, technology is going to be with us. We just need to make use of technology to improve the quality or the engagement level of our teaching in the classroom. The second one, now this one is a little bit tricky, Buria. Technology is a magic bullet for education. In other words, technology is something that you can use to solve all kind of problems that you have in education. Yes? No? Maybe?
Magic bullet is kind of tricky.
Yes, it's a bit tricky, isn't it? Yes.
But,
Because some people do believe that technology can solve everything. If your students are not working very hard, give them some technological tools so that they work harder. Is this the case?
But I will
Yes?
say no.
Okay, I think the answer is probably no. The third question, Ibu Ria, is this. Technology is a useful tool for teaching, yes?
Yes,
You're
absolutely.
nodding your head. Yes, I'm very happy that you are nodding your head. The key word here is that technology can be a useful tool for teaching and for learning as well. Next one. I think you will agree with this, that technology makes good teaching better.
Yes.
The key word here is that if you are a good teacher and if you've done a good job delivering good lessons in the classroom, if you add technology on top of that, I think you will be able to, become a better teacher, basically, to make your teaching even more powerful and useful for the students. What about this one? Agree also? Technology makes bad teaching worse. Yes,
Maybe.
agree? I think this is also true. If you are not a good teacher, if you don't know much about how to go about teaching in the classroom, technology is not going to make you a better person or a better teacher. So I think we need to keep that in mind, yeah? Okay, now here is the most important takeaway, the most important message that I want to share with you. And Ibu is going to read this with us together. Ibu, please try reading it aloud for everyone.
Yeah. The best way to get our students to learn more is to enhance the quality of our teaching. We can do this with the help of technology.
Yes. So the best way to get our students to learn more is to increase, to improve, to enhance the quality of our teaching. So it is the responsibility, the onus is on us actually, because very often when the students do not learn very much from you, the first thing that comes to mind is my students are lazy, they are not very hardworking students and things like that. Yeah, they are bored in class, they are not listening to me in class, and then you're blaming your students for that purpose. But I think increasingly, people in education, researchers, scholars believe that one way for the students to learn more is for us to do a better job in the classroom, to increase the quality of our teaching so that the students can learn more. And we can do this with the help of technology. Ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu sekalian, I will be, discussing with you 5 ideas, 5 very simple ideas, and I will help you remember these 5 ideas using a very simple thing to remember 5T. So 5T. T1, T2, T3, T4, and T5. Now here are the 5 T's that I'm going to share with you. Yeah, so point number 1 is technology and the teacher. I think you will understand later why it is important for the teacher to be the most important person when it comes to using technology. The teacher, him or herself, will have to be a tech user, tech learner, and somebody who embraces technology in the language classroom. Number 2, T number 2 is technology and the teaching method. I think this is very important too. Yeah, knowing technology is one thing, knowing how to use technology to engage students in the classroom is a very, very important thing for us to do. Number 3, I think you are familiar with this. T number 3 is about the teaching materials, materi, bahan ajar yang kita pakai. How can we make use of technology to make, our teaching materials more exciting, more interesting, more useful for our students? But we don't stop there, because the next T is the task or the activities. What do you do after the students have looked at, have examined the teaching materials, the learning materials? What do you do with it? I think you want to get the students to go deeper and engage the students in deeper understanding and exploration of the materials. And finally, the last T is the test or the assessment. You know, the kind of things that you do in order to find out whether and to what extent the students have learned enough from your lesson. So these are the 5 T's that we'll be looking at together this morning. Ya, diulang ya. T nomor 1 adalah you, the teacher. T nomor 2 adalah what you do with technology in the classroom, the teaching method. The next one is the teaching materials, T number 3. T number 4 is the activities that go together with the materials. And finally, the test, the assessment that you do. Is there anything you can do with technology to help you provide interesting, important feedback on the students' learning and all that? Okay, the first one, T number 1 is technology and the teacher. Buria, please make sure your audio is on again. So the very first thing we need to ask, and we need to keep asking ourselves, is this: do we know enough about technology to be able to use technology for teaching and learning purposes? Are you tech savvy? You don't have to be a number 1 person in the use of technology, but I think you need to know enough. Buria, where are you? You are going away. Yes, you're back there. Please don't go away. Please stay with me throughout. Yeah. Okay. So this is a very important question for everyone to think about. Are you comfortable? Do you know enough about technology for you to be able to make use of it in your teaching? So here are some questions. Are you familiar with some educational technological tools, for example? Some here doesn't have to be too many. You don't need to know like 20 or 30 different tech tools. If you know about 3 or 4 or 5, that's more than you need. Ibu Ria, what tech tools do you often use for teaching purposes? Just mention one. If you can't mention even one, you have to go home. Yes, mention at least one.
Like
Kahoot, for example, is very popular. Yeah,
like
Kahoot. Okay, anything else? Number 2?
Canva.
Okay, Canva, yes. I think you can use Canva to do a lot of things. Okay, that is tech tools. You need to know some, not many. Some is enough. Especially those tech tools that allow you to do a lot more in your lesson, to engage your students in a lot of interaction, a lot of question and answer, a lot of discussion and things like that. So in other words, you need to know these tools well enough for you to be able to engage your students in the classroom. And also use these tools to give feedback, to your students. Can you mention a tech tool, usually AI-powered tech tools, that teachers are increasingly using to help the teachers to check on students' work? Ibu Ria, can you mention one?
Like Google Classroom?
Google Classroom, no. I think we need something else. Something that will help you to sort of find out whether the students have learned enough. If they have not learned enough, then you can, use a tech tool to provide feedback. I think Ibu, if I'm not mistaken, Ibu Anita Lee yesterday mentioned some tech tools, AI tools, like Grammarly, for example. I think that can be a very useful tool for you to use so that the students can check their own writing or the grammatical accuracy of their writing. Yeah. Now, if you are not yet there, I think everyone is learning because technology is something that is happening so fast and many of us are not ready. I was not ready as well. During COVID, everyone had to learn how to use technology in some way. Otherwise, we won't be able to teach in the classroom. So I am also in the process of learning. So if you are not there yet, if you're not very comfortable, using technology, I think the next thing you need to do is this. Are you ready to learn? You know, are you ready to learn to do a lot of things, to improve on your knowledge and your professionalism, you know, in a digital environment? That's the key word, yeah? Because in the past, it's always face-to-face. You come to a place and then you listen to somebody talking and that person will be interacting with you, teaching you new things and new skills. But today, everything is done in a digital environment. So these are a few things that you can do to attend online webinars, for example. And there are many of them out there, and they are freely available. And something for you to remember is this: when you attend an online webinar, please don't ask the organizers about attendance, don't ask the organizers about certificate of completion and things like that. I think that is just extra. That's not probably the most important thing. The most important thing is whether and to what extent you learn something useful from the speakers. Yeah. So free webinars is now everywhere, it's available. There are many out there that you can attend. Number two, you can take online professional development courses. And there are many courses out there that you can take for free, from MOOC, for example. Ibu Ria, do you know what MOOC stands for? Begins with massive. Massive. Open online course. Yes.
Courses.
Yes, and there are thousands out there. Yeah. TED is also a great source. There's one section within TED called TED Ed, TED Education. And there's a lot of things that you can learn, even something about English language teaching, how to teach grammar, how to teach vocabulary, how to teach reading and things like that. So you need to do that. You're taking these online courses will help you appreciate and understand what it is like to be on the receiving end, so that when you teach using technology, you can understand how the students follow your lesson and how your students listen to you and interact with you. Yeah. Now the last point I want to say is this: today, I think you don't need to wait for other people to tell you, for your department head to tell you, hey, please take courses, because what is important for you is to have this feeling and attitudes that I want to become better every year. So professional development should be self-directed, you initiating, rather than waiting for people to tell you, hey, it's time for you to take courses, hey, it's time for you to renew your license, and things like that, yeah? So I would go for self-directed instead of other-directed. Which one do you prefer, Buria?
Self-directed.
Very good, yes. Please say that again, please. Say it again.
Self-directed.
Self-directed, yes. And self-directed is related to a very, very important concept in education, and that is self-determined learning. Self-determined learning. I think that's the kind of powerful, motivate you to where you want to be 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. Next one is this: we are still looking at the relationship between the teacher and technology. Yeah. The next one is this: digital user. Apakah Bapak Ibu sekalian seorang yang aktif memakai social media, for example, or other digital tools to develop your digital literacies? Ini istilah keren zaman sekarang ya, digital literacies. Ibu Ria, number one, are you a responsible user of,
yes,
for example, the social media? Because social media is very, very, tricky. It can be very easily abused. And as an educator, I think you need to make sure that you are demonstrating to your students that you are a responsible user of the digital media. If there's something that you have seen on your WhatsApp group, for example, something that is not true, do not forward it, do not share it with other people. If there's something like makan daun jambu bisa menyebabkan kanker Anda hilang misalnya, and that's not true. So stop forwarding that information. Because if you do that, other people will also do the same. And that is very, very irresponsible. Yeah. Apalagi sekarang zamannya pilpres ya, there's a lot of bad information out there. I mean, you can have a preference, but please make sure that you present credible, factual information about a candidate that you are going to vote for in the future. Yeah. So bad information should not be communicated. And then when you use social media, there are differences. Whether you want to use social media for social purposes, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, using Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all that. But more importantly for you, for professionals like you, I think you need to start using social media for professional purposes. Have you tried creating online lessons? Have you tried developing or creating YouTube learning channels, the kind of information that you provide for the public or for your students or for your colleagues to learn from? Do you have a professional Facebook group where people teaching English in Malang can work together, can share ideas and things like that? And that is part of you becoming a professional user of the digital media. Ibu Ria punya
Yes, I have.
Sudah pernah bikin online lessons?
Online lesson when we teach in pandemic.
Oh, during the pandemic, I think you should continue doing that because the trend ke depannya adalah blended learning. So 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, a lot of the teaching will be done in a very blended environment. Sometimes they come to you in class for interaction, for face-to-face teaching, but most of the time, or in some other times, they will be sitting at home and they'll be learning from your materials that you make available online. Yeah. I'm saying this because I am also learning, I am also developing a lot of things using the digital technology. I have a Facebook group. Saya punya Facebook group, professional. Anggotanya lebih dari 10.000. Pesertanya, membernya dari seluruh dunia. So that is one way for me to learn from other people, to share ideas, to exchange ideas with people from all over the world. It's very easy to do. If you want to join the group, namanya apa ya, Bu Ria? Bu Ria tahu ya? I have a very big professional, this is not social ya, very professional Facebook group. Namanya adalah Teacher Voices. Anggotanya sudah lebih dari 12.000. And today I'm inviting you, all of you, to join the group. And if you join today, membership is lifetime. Membership is free for you. But you have to join today. If you join tomorrow, then I'm going to charge you to pay money in order to register. What about other things? I have a blog, and I write in my blog. It's all about English language related, issues and topics. And I also have YouTube channels as well. So these are things that you need to learn. Don't wait until it's too late. I think things that you need to do for your professional development. The next one, very quickly, is technology and teacher quality. As I mentioned early on, yes, technology is a useful tool, but at the end of the day, what is the most important is you, the quality of the teacher. Are you professionally trained? Do you have sufficient qualification? Have you been asking yourself these questions? Am I a good teacher? Can I become a better teacher to my students? So these are things that you need to be thinking about. Ibu Ria, on a scale of 1 to 10, are you a likable teacher? Please say
8.
yes. Bapak Ibu mungkin merasa heran ya, apa sih hubungannya likability dengan peran seorang guru di kelas? Ternyata besar banget. Yeah, research tells us that you learn, you relate with other people, you get along with other people, you listen to people because you like them. Yeah, if you don't like your teacher, then you won't be listening to them. So likability is very important. Buria, on a scale of 1 to 10, do your students like you?
Yes, of course.
Very good. Yes. And that's
11.
Yes, that's what you think.
Yes,
You know,
that's what
please
I'm thinking.
ask your students if they really like you. I'm serious. Likability is very important. You know, one of the reasons your students don't like your lesson, one of the reasons, yeah, your students don't like, lesson is because they don't like you. Yeah, so it's very important to be more likable. Are you a passionate teacher from 1 to 10? Passionate means when you walk into the classroom, you look very, very excited. You look very dynamic. You look very, enthusiastic. Is that you, Iburia? 1 to 10?
9.
Okay, very good. Again, people, these are small things. But these small things are so important when you try to help your students to learn something useful. If you're not passionate, students will just find that, my teacher is not that excited in my lesson. Why should I listen to her or to him? Yeah. Here is more. Now this one is more important because it has to do with your professional qualification, academic qualification. Are you pedagogically competent? 1 to 10 again, Buria?
10.
9 again? 10, very good. What about this one? Are you linguistically competent? This has to do with seorang guru bahasa Inggris harus memiliki kompetensi berbahasa Inggris minimal berapa begitu ya. So let me ask you this question: are you linguistically competent in English?
9.
Very good. In bahasa Indonesia? Not as good. in bahasa Jawa? How is your ngoko or how is your kromo?
Kromo inggil.
I think it's very good, for you to demonstrate to your students that, hey, look, students, I'm good in Japanese, my local, my native language. I'm good in Bahasa Indonesia, my national language, and I'm good in English. I think that will be a great source of motivation for your students. And all of them will feel, if my teacher can do this, I can do it too. I think that feeling is very important to be nurtured in the classroom. And finally, whether or not you are technologically competent. Maybe some of you are still in the process of developing your knowledge and skill, but that is perfectly okay. But I think going forward, you will have to learn a lot more about how technology can be used to improve the quality of your teaching. So that is point number 1. So T nomor 1, terminal 1 adalah technology and the teacher. Very easy, very straightforward, yeah? Okay, I think we are about ready to go to number 2. Technology and teaching method. Ibu Ati, can you turn on your audio, please?
Yes, Pak.
Very good. I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Yeah.
All
Now, this is
right.
about teaching methods. I'm going to show you 2 pictures here. This is picture number 1, and this is
Okay.
picture number 2. Which one do you like better? Number 1 or number 2?
Number 2,
Can you tell me why?
more closer to the students.
More
To the
closer,
students.
yes. Closer to the students. Yes.
Yep.
Do you have a name for this kind of teaching in the classroom?
Dynamic, collaborative, student-centered.
Collaborative. Very good. Yes, I'm looking for that word. Student-centered. The picture on the left-hand side is an example of a lecture, a lesson that is very teacher-centered, professor-centered, or speaker-centered. Yeah. The second picture is something that is more, student-friendly, student-centered, student-oriented kind of teaching. So we expect a lot of collaboration to be happening in the classroom. Collaboration is very important because that's how people actually learn. They learn something from you, very briefly, and then they try to make sense of what they have just learned in the context of interactions, collaboration with their peers. checking their understanding, correcting their understanding, learning from their peers and things like that. So the second one is what current thinking on language teaching methodology is all about. How we can bring our lesson closer to the students. Yeah. I think you understand perfectly well, that teaching is different from learning. Teaching is what we do, the teachers. Learning is what the students do. So unless you involve the students in the learning process, they will not learn very much in the classroom for you. Technology can be used to improve, the way you teach in the classroom. There's a lot of different ways for you to teach in the classroom. The lecture style is probably the most popular, yang paling banyak, yang paling diminati, yang paling mudah mungkin adalah memberi pelajaran dengan metode ceramah, lecturing. Yeah, you can cover a lot of things. You can cover the syllabus very quickly. Buria, have you tried covering the syllabus?
Yes.
Yes. Is that a good thing or is that a good thing or a bad thing? Covering the syllabus. Bapak Ibu, kata cover itu bisa berarti menyelesaikan, ya betul ya? Menyelesaikan bahan. Arti yang kedua dari cover itu adalah menutup. Betul ya? Di cover, ditutupin gitu loh. Now that is what often happens in the classroom. When you say that you cover the syllabus, you menutupi the syllabus. Sehingga siswanya nggak dapat apa-apa, yang dapat cuma gurunya. So that is covering the syllabus. Very tricky. You feel happy because you have covered the syllabus. Yeah, actually, in terms of learning, your students don't learn very much because you have covered the syllabus. So what do we need to do? The thinking today is not that we should cover the syllabus, Buria, but I think we should help our students to discover the syllabus. Ini beda ya, antara covering itu yang melakukan guru, discovering itu yang melakukan siapa? Siswanya. Makanya zaman sekarang itu banyak sekali metodologi yang namanya discovery learning atau inquiry based learning atau flipped classroom atau problem based classroom atau project based classroom. Debate is another way of engaging our students in discovering, learning more about the topic that you are presenting to the students. So I think we need to remember, if you look at the infographic there are many different ways of delivering our lesson, of getting our lesson across to our students. Lecturing is just one way. Ya, hanya satu di antara sekian banyak cara that we do our lesson in the classroom. So the key thing is for us to make use of a variety, different ways. Flipped classroom is excellent, especially if you are thinking about technology. Later I'm going to give you an example of how I do a flipped lesson with my students. And another important thing today is this: you have to teach less, you have to speak less, you have to talk less. Because if you speak more, the students will have very little opportunity to process, to digest, to deepen their understanding about important points in your lessons. Yeah, if you teach less, I think we are expecting our students to learn more. So, is it okay to be lecturing? The answer is yes, but I think we are behind this very important message that you have all learned together. Tell me and I'll forget. Betul ya, Bu Ria ya? Tell me and I forget. Show me and I will remember. Involve me and I'll understand. So our job is to involve the students as much as possible. And one big word in education today is engagement. How we can engage our students 90% of the time in the classroom. If you can, 100%. but 90% is the benchmark, the standard. So keep asking yourself this question. When you teach a lesson, keep thinking, keep asking, keep checking, how many of my students are engaged? How often are they disengaged in the classroom? So again, just a reminder, lecturing, method drama is okay, but don't use it too often, because that is not the best way. In fact, that's probably the worst way for teaching language in particular. And avoid monologic lecturing style. Somebody talking for half an hour, that's not good. And that's why I asked Ibu Ria to accompany me, so that I can have an exchange, a conversation, a dialogue with her. And Ibu Ati, thank you so much for joining as well. So these are things that we need to keep in mind when we think about how we can use technology to engage our students. Yeah, so the key thing to remember for number one, teacher and technology. The teacher must be willing to learn more and must be willing to use more, either for social purposes and also for professional purposes. Yang kedua, kata kuncinya adalah, I think, when you use technology, think about how we can use a language teaching method that is more engaging, that is more student-centered, that is more student-friendly, keeping in mind that it is the students who do the learning, not you. Yeah, the teaching that you do should be kept to a minimum. The next one is materi ajar, bahan ajar. Bahan ajar. Ibu Ati, tolong dibaca Ibu. Ibu Ati, biar nggak ngantuk Ibu ini.
Right.
Yes, Ibu.
No, of course I'm not sleepy if I'm listening to you, Pak.
Yes,
Right.
You are engaged throughout my lesson.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, Ibu, silakan dibaca.
All right. In the absence of interesting text, very little is possible.
Ya, diulang Bu, tolong diulang Bu.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not out of my battery.
Oke, diulang nih, lihat lagi Bu.
In the absence of interesting text, very little is possible.
Diulang Bu.
In the absence of interesting text, very little is possible.
That is what I call learning. Because now, the second time around, you are really, really paying attention. So you remember what you have just seen on the screen. Yeah? And learning should be like that. But in relation to teaching materials, this is extremely important. Bapak Ibu sekalian, if you teach a lesson and your teaching materials are not interesting, chances are very, very small that your students will learn anything from that teaching materials. So keep this in mind. Yeah, if your materials are not interesting, printed materials, video materials, or maybe website materials, if they're not interesting, nothing much can happen in the classroom. So keep that in mind. Yeah, I understand that many teachers will have no choice. They have to use the prescribed course books or textbooks. Yeah, I understand that. But I think you have a choice to add, to modify, to bring in additional materials that are now available on the internet. So be willing to take risks and be willing to make use of materials that you believe are really, really, really interesting and engaging for the students. Without that, nothing much is possible. In English language learning, dalam konteks belajar bahasa, itu ada two main consideration for you to think about, so that the students learn much more from the teaching materials that you are presenting in the classroom, whether it's audio materials, video materials, or even printed materials. Number one, the content. Compelling means the content will have to be very, very interesting. The content will be so interesting. Ini penting sekali, Bapak Ibu sekalian. The content will have to be so interesting that the students keep asking for more. Saya ulang ya. The content of the materials is so interesting, so relevant, that the students will ask you for more. Bu, atau Pak, the lesson is so interesting, the materials are so interesting. Can you tell me where I can find more materials? And that is the most wonderful, wonderful thing that can happen in the classroom. If you have a set of material, the students look at it, the students read it, the students listen to it, at the end of it, then answer some questions and then bye-bye. I think they learn something, but not very much. The key thing here is for the students to like the material so much that they are willing to go beyond what you do in the classroom. Yeah? Number two, another important thing to remember is that the materials will have to be comprehensible. Anything that is too difficult will just be an obstacle for the students to acquire the language that you are teaching to your students. In this case, it can be English or Korean or Japanese and things like that. So these are two of the most important considerations. And where do you find materials? Again, the internet technology is right there in front of you. You just need to have access to the internet and you'll be able to basically to find, all kinds of materials that you can use for teaching purposes. I have here examples, but keep in mind that the materials are educational in terms of content, and number two, the language is accessible. I am referring to TED. TED is just a wonderful, wonderful source for language teaching, language learning materials in the classroom. Here are some examples. This is about science, yeah? I think you can teach, you can use lessons that are not related to how are you, goodbye, and things like that, but something that is of interest to your students. But the key thing again is whether and to what extent your students are interested in reading or listening or watching a video on this topic. Here is another one. Yeah? Again, it's from TED. If you look at the time stamp there, it's only 5 minutes, and that's the kind of materials that will likely engage our students. Here's another one. This is about business. If you're teaching ESP, for example, or English for academic purposes, these are just excellent sources of materials. If you are teaching psychology students, this YouTube video is just wonderful. The power of passion and perseverance. And here is another one, the power of believing that you can improve, by Carol Dweck. Now these are very good people, educational scholars who share their passion, their insights with the public globally. Yeah. The content is good because the content is very carefully reviewed and edited, and their delivery, their presentation is also very good. Not everyone can present in TED. Yeah, in order for you to be able to present on TED, you have to attend some training. You can't just go cold and then do a presentation. Like this lady, for example, I think she was telling her experience presenting this. 6 minutes, but she had to spend hours and hours and hours attending training because her first video was rejected. Too long, too complicated, not interesting. Yeah, but she, kept on, and eventually she was able to give a very, very fabulous presentation about grit, the power of passion and perseverance. Yeah. Bapak Ibu, as I said earlier on, there's a lot of resources on the internet. You just need to spend some time looking at, materials that are available very often for free. Yeah, I have some example here on my screen, and Unisma will send you my slides later on. So you don't need to take notes or take a photo of this. Okay. Some of you may be thinking, yes, but I'm teaching lower proficiency students, for example. They may not be able to understand information presented in TED or other YouTube learning channels, for example. Yeah, the language may be a little bit hard. Now, this is where technology comes in handy. You can make use of technology to help your students to understand by simplifying the text, by making the text easier for the students to understand. And there are many different ways of doing it. Subtitle, yeah. Usually TED Talks, all the subtitles are there available for you. Even the script is available. And you can use a very simple tool like Google Translate, for example. Or this one, Microsoft Translator, for example, to translate the script into the student's language first. There's no problem with that. Students read the script, they have the translated version, and then they listen to the video. Yeah? So that is how you can make the lesson interesting, the content is interesting, but the language is also accessible or comprehensible. Yeah? Or if you are very much into AI-powered, like ChatGPT, for example, I think that comes in handy as well. You just put a text and ask ChatGPT to translate it into Japanese, into Bahasa Indonesia, into whatever language. It will give it to you very, very quickly. So technology is right there to help you with your job in the classroom. So one thing to remember about the teaching materials, Bapak Ibu sekalian, ya, untuk kita yang mengajar bahasa Inggris, something for us to remember is this. Ibu Ria, tolong dibaca.
Students acquire lots of language when they see and hear lots of interesting and accessible text.
Yes, ini adalah sebuah kalimat yang pendek, tapi merefleksikan, research insights into the nature of language learning. So language learning, language proficiency develops when the students have a lot of opportunities to listen every day, every single day, and also to read every day, every single day. But the materials will have to be interesting, the materials will have to be comprehensible. Ini adalah intisari dari begitu banyak penelitian pemerolehan belajar bahasa yang sudah dilakukan selama 50-60 tahun belakangan ini. So remember that, use technology, and technology is just a perfect, a magical tool that you can make use of to provide students with a lot of interesting and comprehensible materials. Yeah? So when you do this on a regular basis, when you ask your students to do this, when you motivate your students to do this on a regular basis, I think they will learn a lot more. Develop their English language proficiency over a period of time. Yang berikutnya, diulang tadi ya, yang ketiga. Yang pertama tadi, Ibu Ria, yang pertama adalah technology and
teacher.
Very good, you remember. Number 2?
Technology and teaching method.
Very good. Number 3?
And technology and teaching materials or text.
And teaching materials, yes. And the next one is what you do with the materials, gitu ya. Ini task activities-nya, begitu. Again, I think you need to be thinking in terms of all these things. Problem-based task is very motivating, is very interesting. It can get the students to be feeling really, really self-determined and motivated to complete the task or the problem. Something that is of interest to your students. And this is the kind of task that should encourage, allow, provide students with opportunities to do more reading, to do more listening, yeah, so that they understand better, so that they deepen their understanding and use this as a basis for solving the problem or for completing the task. Yeah. Nanti di rumah bisa melihat ini yang namanya 5E model of a project-based or task-based learning that can happen in the classroom. It's a very simple model. It's a very powerful model that you can think about. Yeah. I am now going to give you an example from my own teaching. Yeah. Now look at it as a flipped classroom. Look at it as a problem-based classroom. Look at it as a project-based classroom. Yeah, there is some teaching involved, very small, but the students are the ones who are doing the learning, the reading, the listening, the talking, the exchanging of information. Let me give you the context first. Yeah. Saya mengajar konten, but the idea is applicable for teaching, language, reading, writing, speaking, or whatever. So my course is about language teaching methodology. It's a teaching course, and I have about 20 students in my class, both local, Singaporean, and also international students. And the course is about the theory and practice of language teaching. Okay? I think some of you may be teaching a course like this. But as I said, the idea that I'm sharing with you is applicable when you teach presentation skills, for example, when you teach reading, when you teach writing, for example. Konsepnya sama. Ini. This is the design of my lesson. Very simple, but very, very useful. Remember what I said earlier, this is a flipped classroom. Yeah? But first, when I designed the lesson, I have a very clear idea in mind, yeah, in terms of the objective, in terms of the learning outcome. The learning outcome for that particular lesson that I'm teaching is for the students to have a very good understanding of the principles for teaching vocabulary. And I tell my students at the beginning that you will, after learning together with me, you will put together a set of ideas on how to teach vocabulary, and your ideas will be published in an e-book. Remember, this is a technology related, yeah? The e-book will be used as a medium for the students to publish their work. Now, the design of the lesson is before, during, and after. The before is like 1 week before. The during is when I meet the students in the classroom. Yeah, the after is like 1 day or 2 days after the lesson is over. So the lesson is not a one-off lesson, but it's like a series, and the students started learning, preparing even before they come to class. This is what happens. So 1 week before, I provide students with a lot of materials for them to look at, to read, to learn in the comfort of their home. And I'm using a very simple tool, very useful tool. It's called Wakelet. Ibu Ria pernah dengar Wakelet? Ibu Ria?
No.
Dereng ya? Dereng, yeah. Nanti saya kirim ya aplikasinya. This one is very useful, very simple, very useful, and more importantly, it's free, gratis. Forever gratis, katanya begitu. So you don't have to pay for anything. And this is an online cabinet or digital cabinet where you can upload printed materials, when you can upload video materials, you can upload anything there. And the students can look at it, students can write comments, the students can respond to your questions and all that. Very simple, very useful, and very portable. So this is what happened. Before they come to my class, 1 week before, I have prepared them, I have sent them quite a bit of materials. In the classroom, in class, remember what I said earlier on, in a student-centered lesson, the teacher does not spend a lot of time lecturing for 1 hour, no. Small, like 15, 20 minutes, that's what I did. And then the students spend time discussing what they have read before they come to class, and what they have understood from my short lecture. And afterwards, another online task using Google Doc. I think most of you know how to use Google Doc, very simple. So look at this, this is the design of my lesson. It's a flipped classroom. There's a lot of things that the students will have to do before they come to class, and my job is just providing very simple, summary, synthesizing some of the key points related to that topic on vocabulary. This is some examples of what the students did before they come to my class for that particular lesson. Yeah, so they spend time reading and also writing on Wakelet. Yeah, there you go. So you can see here that before they come to your class, they have learned something. I think that's the idea behind flipped classroom. And that is one of the most important, perhaps, uses of technology. So instead of us teaching everything, let technology be available for the students to learn something before they come to your class. During the lesson, again, I spoke a little. Yeah, maybe I summarized some of the key points, and then the students work in groups. And I told them to the groups, like 5 different groups. I asked each group to come up with 1 or 2 principles for teaching vocabulary. Oh, my students are all teachers, yeah? They're all teachers, they have had experience in teaching, so they understand why it is important for them to understand and to get insights from the research literature on the principles. So they put together their principles on Google Docs. So altogether we have about 20 principles. And I said to them, okay, now we have 20 principles, but 20 principles is too many for people to remember. And this is where I engage the students in a debate. Ada 20 prinsip yang mereka sudah tampilkan di Google Doc. Nah, sekarang saatnya mereka berdebat. Ya, serius membicarakan which principles should stay and which principles should go. And they have to provide reasons, rationale for their decision. Remember, this is how the students actually, get involved in a deeper level of thinking, elaborating on their understanding, extending their understanding of some of the most important principles for teaching vocabulary. My job, very easy. I did not talk. I just, intervene when the students are getting upset, when they're getting angry because they're debating, remember? So my job is to calm them down. Please relax. This is not a fight. This is an academic discussion for you to learn a bit more. And then I asked them to, put together the final list of 10 principles or so, again in Google Doc. And I asked students to add, 1 paragraph or 2 for each principle. Jadi kalau ada 10 prinsipal plus masing-masing 1 paragraf, itu ada 10 minimal, ada 10 paragraf ya. And they have to write an introduction and a conclusion, and that's it. The project is done. Apakah selesai begitu saja? Tidak. The ebook is done, is completed, is published, and I then help them to promote their work on Facebook and also on my learning channel. So this is more or less what I did with my students. But keep in mind, now this is an example of how we can do more in the classroom using technology to engage the students in the learning process. If you do that, apakah peran dari guru atau pengajar menjadi lebih kecil, Ibu ya? Dengan begitu, biarin aja siswanya belajar sendiri gitu, gurunya nggak usah ikut-ikut. Gitu? Is that? Please say no.
No, of course.
No, of course not. Because dengan teknologi, dengan flip classroom, tugas seorang dosen, guru itu bahkan lebih berat sebetulnya. Because what happens in the classroom can be unpredictable. And we have to be willing to tolerate ambiguity and unpredictability in the classroom. Keeping in mind that is one of the best ways for us to engage our students and for us to help our students to learn more from our lesson. Ngoten nggih, Guru ya?
Nggih.
Ngoten nggih. Bapak Ibu tadi saya mengatakan ini contoh flip classroom, apakah bisa diaplikasikan untuk mengajar bahasa di kelas, speaking, reading, writing, dan sebagainya? Bisa, sangat bisa. Bapak Ibu, apakah ada yang mengajar reading di kelas ini? Is anyone of you teaching reading, for example? Membaca. Bu Ati, are you teaching reading?
I usually teach writing, Pak Willy.
Writing is even better. Yes, writing is even better. You can look at writing, in a lesson like, okay, your task You ask your students to complete a task, a project, writing about tourism in Malang, for example. So that will be the project, yeah? And for that project, the students will have to do a lot of reading, right?
Yes.
Harus, yeah, they have to do a lot of reading. Otherwise, they won't be able to write very well.
Yep.
They have to do a lot of reading, they have to analyze the reading, they have to discuss the reading, they have to choose what should be included in their final writing project and things like that. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this flip model. So the way we usually teach writing, for example, in the classroom, please brainstorm for ideas. And then you start writing. That's not going to help the students a great deal. Yeah? Very good, thank you. I think we have now come to the very last one, technology and test. But don't look at test as an exam. Look at test as a way for us to find out whether and to what extent or how much the students have learned from you or have not learned from you. So technology can be a wonderful tool, yeah, for you to help assess the amount and the quality of learning that happens in the classroom. This is known, I think you are aware of the difference between assessment of learning and assessment for learning. And technology can be an excellent tool to help you do this. Assessment for learning. Not just testing their learning, but the kind of assessment that will propel the students to move forward so that they can learn more after you have finished teaching your lesson. Now this kind of assessment is usually small and frequent. They may not be graded, tidak selalu diberi nilai, but it has to happen frequently, small and frequent. And that is how you check what the students have learned or have not learned. And Buria earlier mentioned about Kahoot, for example, and that is an excellent way for you to keep checking, how much the students learn from the lesson that you delivered earlier on. Can you think of any other tools that you have used other than Kahoot? Buria? Buria, please say Quizlet.
Quizlet.
Yes, Quizlet is very popular. Yeah, part of it is free, but if you want to use the sophisticated version, you have to pay a little bit. I would go for the free version. It's always good to, use something that is free. Teachers are not very rich people anyway, so the salary is usually very small. So anything free is welcome. But think about this, Bapak Ibu sekalian. Ya. Banyak jalan, banyak cara untuk mengevaluasi, untuk mendapat informasi dari siswa mengenai what they have learned or what they have not learned from you. Verbal, written, test is just one way. Itu hanya satu saja. Jadi pesannya adalah please try to think of different, multiple ways of assessing your students. If you teach reading, for example, Ibu Nasihah, Ibu Dorotun Nasihah, if you teach reading and if you assess reading, how do you assess? Taunya dari mana siswa sudah paham bacaannya? Ibu Dorotun, are you there? Wah, pakai mikrofon. Seru.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you assess? Yes, how do you assess your students in a reading lesson?
Okay, I use comprehensive reading.
Yes. Ada cara lain, Bu? Cuma satu? Yeah.
Discussion.
Discussion. Very good. Yes, I like that. Yes, discussion is another way for us to check whether the students have understood. Anything else?
Reading.
Aduh, baru dua ini, Bu. Masa hanya ada dua jalan ke surga, kan banyak jalan ke surga katanya begitu. Jadi kata kuncinya adalah multiple, many.
Okay, presentation.
Presentation, very good. I like that. Yes.
Okay.
And students present something, that reflects their comprehension, their understanding of the text. Ini, Ibu.
Yes.
Kalau ada waktu, silahkan ke Google. And you will be surprised at there are hundreds and hundreds of different ways for us to check, to monitor, to assess our students' comprehension. Banyak sekali. Nah, ini harus kita manfaatkan. Technology is helping us, telling us that, look, there are many different ways of doing this. Sometimes setelah membaca sebuah berita atau apa begitu ya dari newspaper, you can ask the students, please create a poster, please create an infographic, for example. All of these are making use of technology. Ya, ada satu lagi namanya digital storytelling. I think that is another excellent way of giving students something interesting to do, but also something that will reflect their comprehension, their understanding of what they have read. Yeah, and technology can be a wonderful tool for that. Ini contoh lagi banyak sekali yang namanya formative assessment, continuous assessment, visual, written, discussion, debate, presentation, digital, banyak sekali. I think we need to expand our repertoire of assessment, and technology is just there, very good. Ibu Atik tadi yang mengajar writing ya Bu ya? Ya, Ibu Atik, nggak dengar Bu Atik? Mengajar writing ya Ibu ya? Nggak bunyi Bu? Yes.
Yes, Pak Willy.
Very good. You're teaching writing. So how do you give feedback to your students? Setelah mahasiswa menyerahkan the first draft and you look at it, what do you do?
Usually I ask them to have peer review.
I like that. Yes, very good.
Yes.
What else?
And then after that, I also ask them to consult their writing with me face to face. Or sometimes I ask them to send their file to my email or our WhatsApp group. Then I will provide them with the feedback, with a written corrective feedback.
Excellent. Written corrective feedback. In other words, it's verbal feedback that you provide, yeah?
Yes.
Apakah bisa dengan audio, bisa Bu? Like audio mediated feedback?
Oh yeah, sometimes I use voice note in my WhatsApp. Yes, because sometimes students don't really get my point in the written corrective feedback, and then I use voice notes.
So this is a great example of how we can, have a variety of different ways of providing or assessing our students or providing feedback to our students. Ibu Atik sudah mencoba video notes. Sudah? Belum ya?
Video notes,
boleh
not
dicoba.
yet.
Kalau audio note bisa, video note pasti juga bisa.
I use screencast.
Mahasiswa itu selalu senang sekali melihat wajah dosennya di depan.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. So yes, so the key point is that there are multiple different ways, and these are good because your students are different. Ada yang senang diberi catatan, ada yang senang mendapat feedback dari audio, dari video, and many other things. The good thing, Ibu Ati, you can do a piece of research comparing, students' perception about different kinds of feedback, peer feedback, teacher feedback, how teacher feedback is provided in different ways using a variety of technological tools. I think that would be a very interesting piece of study for you to look at.
Yeah.
So the key word here, Bapak Ibu, is multiple ways of assessing, multiple ways of teaching as well. Not just assessing, but also teaching. And multiple ways of engaging our students in our lesson using technology. Bapak Ibu sekalian, mungkin perlu diingatkan sekali lagi to improve our teaching. Focus on pedagogy, not just technology. I mean, technology is going to be very important, but the key thing again is pedagogy. Yeah, technology is there for us to use. If you are good, pedagogically speaking, then chances are higher that your use of technology will further enhance your teaching. Jadi, mungkin perlu diingat lagi, technology plus pedagogy itu adalah a marriage made in Malang. Made in heaven.
Pak Willy, sorry.
Yes, this is the last. Yeah. The last point, the last slide, Pak. Thank you for your reminder. Bapak Ibu sekalian masih ingat ya? Ada 5 T ya Bu ya. Yang pertama adalah teacher and technology. Number 2, technology and teaching methods. Yang ketiga adalah technology and teaching materials, the text. Kemudian technology and the task. And finally, technology and assessment or a test. Masih ada satu lagi nih, supaya ingat. Ini biar Ibu Ati yang membaca. Suaranya enak sekali Bu Ati, saya senang sekali. Bu Ati suaranya keras gitu ya, meyakinkan lah kalau guru di kelas suaranya seperti itu. Bu Ati silakan dibaca.
Yeah, thank you for your compliment, Pak. Right, the best way to get our students to learn more is to increase the quality of our teaching.
Ya, terus yang terakhir.
We can do that with the help of technology.
Yes, Bapak Ibu silakan tepuk tangan itu Ibu Ati Umama.
Thank you.
Ampun, matur nuwun.
Sami-sami, Pak.
Nggih, monggo.
Terima kasih Pak Willy. A very important discussion and a very interactive engagement with the audience, with the participants. Not only providing theory, but also giving a direct example on how to integrate technology in our English language teaching classroom. Bapak Ibu, because we have a very limited time, we only have for about 10 minutes. So I would like to invite maybe one student from one question from the offline and maybe one question from the online Zoom meeting. Okay. I saw there is a question in online platform here.
Yes, direct question is fine. Just have your microphone on so that we can have a conversation.
Okay, direct questions from the offline maybe?
Offline or online? Yes.
Bu Ati.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bu Ati.
Yes,
Bu
please,
Ati. Yes, Bu Ati. I've been waiting for your question since yesterday.
Pak Willy. Okay. Thank you for the chance. Well, Pak Willy, thank you for the very great presentation. And you mentioned a bit about AI and ChatGPT. And as I told you, I teach writing, and this is a very big challenge for me. Would you please give me enlightenment how to make use of ChatGPT for my writing class? Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay.
I think this is an excellent question. What do we do with ChatGPT? Is it useful for us? The answer is yes. For us, it's very, very useful. For students, it can be useful too. Remember, please pay attention to the word I use. It can be useful for our students. ChatGPT can be a very good starting point for the students to, explore a topic because very often students get, draw a blank when they try to write about something. They have no ideas what to write about, and ChatGPT can provide you with that initial piece of ideas that they can, maybe they can make use of, hopefully in consultation with you. I think that what is important, in consultation with the teacher. And that is where the usefulness of ChatGPT for our students stop. Remember, we are teaching writing. It's a new skill, teaching writing in a new language. And we want our students to be able to generate their own language. The ideas, yes, they can learn, they can sort of adapt the ideas from ChatGPT or from their peers or from their friends, but the actual writing will have to be done by our students. How do we go about checking? Very simple. I think we can ask the students to come up with the initial outline, yeah, and then if you want to make sure that the students are doing the writing themselves, then give them time in the classroom to write their first draft.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, and then afterwards, maybe at the end of the week or maybe 2 weeks later, then you can, when the students submit their final draft, then you can sort of compare and contrast, how much the students are making use of the AI tool for their writing. My personal opinion, and this is the opinion of many educators nowadays, is that we have to teach our students how to use ChatGPT in a responsible manner. Whether we like it or not, the students will be making use of ChatGPT or other tools that are available out there. The key point for us to remember is to what extent we allow our students to borrow everything from ChatGPT. I think that is always a danger. Yeah. So
thank you very
giving
much,
a practice, to our students on comparing and contrasting their writing and the one produced by ChatGPT can be a good thing. But yeah, I think we need to encourage our students to make use of ChatGPT. You should be using ChatGPT too. Ibu Ati, I mentioned earlier on, right, about how you can generate a piece of research looking at different types of feedback, whether technology mediated or not. The first thing you need to do is to ask ChatGPT, I want to do a piece of research in this area. What would be a very good design for that study? But the actual study, you have to do it yourself, right? But the initial ideas can be, generated by ChatGPT. I have no issue with that. So that was an excellent question. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Bu Ati.
Yeah. Thank you. Pak Willy, there is one more question in Zoom meeting. So from Pak Muhammad Ikal Suryana from Polytechnic Negeri, I cannot really read it.
Malang.
Malang, yes. So nowadays, kids love playing game. Looks like they are addicted to their smartphone. And the question is, what should we do with our children, for example? And then the second one, when we are talking about technology, what should we do when we are dealing with adult learners? Sometimes this group of adult learners are not really familiar yet with, especially like what we call it, I don't want to say older generation, but sometimes certain group of adult learners, they are not really familiar yet. Then how can we maximize the use of technology in this context? So that's the question from Muhammad Ikal.
Yes, the second question I think is very important for us to remember. We often think of technology in terms of something that is difficult, that is complicated. Yes, of course, there are tools that are not easy to use for teaching or for learning purposes. But for us language teachers, for us in education, when we pick a piece of technology that we want to use, one thing to keep in mind is that, number one, it has to be easy. It has to be easy, it has to be simple. It has to be something that doesn't require very complicated login procedure. Stay away from that. Yeah, because today the tendency is for people, for the tech tool creators, to come up with something that is plug and play. I think we should go for that. Plug and play. Something that doesn't require complicated procedures to make use of. Number two, the second consideration is find something that is free. So it's simple and free. And you don't have to use a lot of tech tools in your teaching. I think I mentioned early on, maybe 3-4 cukup kok, gitu. Nggak usah banyak-banyak, gitu. And as you go along, you can add one more. As you go along, you can add an additional one. One tool that I've used is very easy, simple tool that you can use at the beginning of the lesson. Di awal pelajaran pertama, untuk warm up activity, whether you teach writing, whether you teach speaking or listening or whatever, it's called Answer Garden. Answer Garden. It's very easy to create, and once you have created, the task, very simple task, you can send the link to the students, and the students just click on the link and they write something. Very easy to use. That is, and there are a lot of tools like this that are available these days. And these are free. Very often these tools are free and easy to use. So that'd be my advice to you, Pak. Something that is easy. Something that requires that you log in using your email or using your personal data. Stay away from that. Because there's always the danger that people might steal your personal data. I think that is probably not a very good idea. The first one is about games. A very difficult question, but also a very interesting question. Bapak Ibu mungkin sudah pernah mendengar yang namanya gamification atau apalah begitu ya. Memakai game sebagai sarana untuk belajar. Ini penting sekali untuk siswa yang anak-anak masih kecil. Ternyata belajar lewat games itu bisa sangat-sangat powerful. Because games, number one, satu, interesting and very addictive as well. Yang kedua, bahasanya bisa dipoles sehingga siswa itu bisa memahami. They understand what is in the game. So, very powerful combination for learning purposes, for speaking, maybe a little bit for listening as well. And when the game is interesting, I think the students will go the extra mile. Istilahnya begitu. They will try the best they can in order to be able to play the game, right? And for them to play the game, they have to understand the instruction in Bahasa Inggris, yeah? And they have to do the action also in Bahasa Inggris. So games are good. So don't stay away from games. Especially for young children. I think I've heard something like Second Life or something that you can create. It's a game-like, language learning activity where the students can create a new personality, maybe menjadi Superman atau super apa begitu ya, and then they have to play in order to solve something, project or some kind of a quiz. So don't stay away from games. Yeah, I think games are very good for language learning purposes. The only thing is that if the students play games and they make use of a lot of the internet quota, then you have to pay more. I mean, the parents have to pay more for that. Yeah. But other than that, games are fine.
Okay, thank you so much. Please give another round of applause for our keynote speaker today. It's a very, very useful. From the first presenter, we have from University of Sydney, Australia, and then this one, the second one, from National Institute of Education, Singapore. A very impressive keynote speakers that we have this morning and very useful insight. So I would like to invite the IT team to provide certificate of appreciation for Dr. Willy Renandia.
Thank you.
Wait a moment, Dr. Willy would like to take a picture. So 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you very much because we have right at 11 a.m. and then it's now time for the conclusion. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Willy. See you again in our next year conference, hopefully.
Yes, on site,
so much.
not online.
Yeah.
Next year, on site.
Because, Dr. Ahmad Mahbub also.
Yes, I want to go to Malang next year.
Yes, thank you. Again, thank you so much. Thank you, that's from me.
Thank you everyone.
And thank you, bye-bye. Thank you so much,
you.
Dr. Willy Renandia. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Bu
that's
Ati.
Bapak Ibu, our second keynote presentation from Bapak Dr. Willy Renandia. I do not need to make a summary because its time is up. And then we will go to the next session, which is the closing ceremony of this international conference. That's all from me. Good morning and Wallahul muwaffiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Give applause once again, everyone. Thank you, Pak Imam, for guiding the last session of keynote speaker session for today's conference. Thank you very much, Pak Willy. Do you agree, Bapak Ibu, if his presentations always encourage us to be a better teacher in equality and to be more updated in technology? Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Eko, Bu Nia, could you please to come forward to sit in front because we will have soon the opening ceremony. Closing ceremony. And Dr. Amar, could you please to join with Ibu Dr. Kurniasi and Dr. Eko. Dr. Hamidin, could you please join with them for closing ceremony of the 4th ICON-ELT 2023. Okay, Pak Alvan, could you please join with Dr. Ahmar? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you all and good morning, Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable, all the keynote speakers of the 4th ICON-ELT 2023. We have here on site in Universitas Islam Malang, Dr. Ahmar Mahbub from University of Sydney, Australia. And then just now we together listen to the presentations of the Honorable Dr. Willy Ardian Renandia from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. And the Honorable Dr. Muhammad Yunus, MPD from Universitas Islam Malang, and the unforgettable Professor Anitali IDD from Widya Mandala Catholic University, Indonesia. And then the Honorable, the two of our invited speakers, Ribut Wahyudi PhD and Ibu Anita Triastuti PhD. The convener of English Education Department Universitas Islam Malang, Dr. Eko Suhartoyo MPD. The chairpersons of the 4th ICON-ELT 2023, Dr. Kurniasi MA. Respectable the faculty members, the participants who have joined on-site and also online, from University Teknologi Malaysia, and then from Gontor. Thank you very much for gathering here until the closing ceremony. And then all the dedicated committee members and the distinguished guests. First of all, let's thanks to our God, the most gracious, who has given us blessings so that we can come together in this auspicious gathering. Let's also not forget to our centuries blessings and peace be upon to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the excellencies, speakers, thank you very much for gathering here with us in the closing ceremony of the 4th International Conference on English Language Teaching 2023 under the theme The Future of ELT in the Digital Age, Issues and Innovation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's commence the closing ceremony with a prayer based on our beliefs. The following agenda is reciting Salawat Nuril Anwar together. Sallu ala Nabi Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Nuril Anwar wasirit asrari watiriyakil ومفتاح باب اليسار سيدنا Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before coming to the closing ceremony, we would like to have a request for Dr. Ahmar Mahbub to give a testimony during your journey from Australia to Malang, especially when you have a conference in our university. At your convenience, Dr. Ahmar Mahbub.
Thank you so much. You put me on the spot. Well,
it's such kind of surprise for you.
Yes. Yes, I have to practice my speaking skills now. All right, so I just arrived in Malang last night. So unfortunately, I missed the first day of the sessions, which I wish I could have attended, but the schedule didn't permit it. It's my first time in Malang, and I didn't really know what to expect. You can see a few pictures on the internet, you can look at the Google map, but that doesn't tell you anything. It's actually coming here and being here, just, being in the presence, because we learn through all of our senses. And I think that's very important for us to keep in mind when we are focused on language teaching and language learning, that language is a very important part of how we learn, but it's not the only one. We learn mostly from observation and engagement. We learn from seeing and doing rather than just the language itself. And I think being here, even just for half a day, has really given me a much better understanding of Malang than I would ever have developed not coming here. Just being around the campuses, I'm staying at a hotel where I think I'm surrounded by at least 5 or 6 universities. It just tells me how much engagement there is with knowledge production, how much motivation there is among the young people and also the leaders in trying to create a better environment for everybody. It's just the diversity within Indonesia is something I was talking about earlier. It's something that you were mentioning, how many different languages there are, how many different cultures, how many different religions, and yet everybody lives in peace and harmony, which is a very good thing to have, and it's a model for other people to learn from, because I think diversity is one of the things that we have, over a period of time, we don't see it as being as important. But let me just give a comparison. In an ecosystem, in an environmental ecosystem, for example, let's just take Borneo for an example, the diversity of life is the strength of the forest. The more diverse it is, the stronger it is. It is the same thing with human populations. The more diverse we are, the more languages we have, the more cultures we have, the more different ways of thinking and doing we have, the stronger we are as a community. Thank you. And I think that is one of the things I have observed in the limited time I've been here, but hoping that as I stay longer, and I have been to Indonesia, to different parts before, so in a sense being here is adding to my understanding of how that diversity is so strong, and I hope that you're able to maintain that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Could you please give round of a big applause? Thank you very much for your testimony. Dr. Ahmar, thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's continuing to the speech by the convener of English Education Department, and he will also officially close the 4th ICON-ELT 2023. Please welcome Dr. Eko Suhartoyo.
Thank you very much, Ibu Fepti Ismiatun. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, let me clarify that I'm not a doctor yet, but I'm amongst the best doctors in the room. Give applause to you all. Good morning, everyone. Excellency, the Vice Rector of Academic and Collaboration Affairs, Professor Dr. Andes Haji Junaidi, Mr. MPD, PhD, the Excellency Dean, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Dr. Hasan Busri, MPD, And the Vice Dean 3, Bapak Dr. Hamidin MPD, and we have Bapak Dr. Muhammad Yunus as one of keynote speaker yesterday, and we have Bapak Candidate Dr. M. Faruk Ubaidillah as an invited speaker on the workshop on the first day, and respectable Ibu Dr. Kurniasi MA as the chairman of the 4th International Conference on ELT 2023, and the excellent committee of ICON-ELT 2023. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, all praise are to Allah, the merciful and the all beneficent, whose grace and blessing have enabled us to attend here for the closing ceremony of the 4th International Conference on ELT 2023. May salawat and salam be with our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has guided us from the darkness to the lightness with Islamic religions. Special thanks to our distinguished presenters and participants for attending this conference on the issues and innovations of ELT in the digital era. Especially we have also the offline participants from national and international participants. We have from UTM, University Technology Malaysia. Thank you very much for your attendance. And we have several national participants here. We know that experts in the field have informed us about the urgent needs of the technology tools and dependable internet-based communication in the English language classroom. And we have also learned for the last 2 days the importance of collaborative projects where students collaborate and share available resources. On behalf of the English Education Department, we hope that this conference has provided you with a valuable insight and innovative ideas, anticipating the digital era in the future in your own teaching context. As English language teaching professionals, we are responsible for staying up to date with the latest innovation in learning technologies. And we must also reflect on our experiences and practices as teacher researchers. By doing so, we can better understand the needs of our students and develop effective teaching strategies that promote their language learning. So, we encourage you to continue sharing your interests and talents with the colleagues at your institutions through the upcoming conference next year. And we can help foster the community of English language teaching professionals who are committed to addressing the challenge of ELT in the digital ages. And I do beg to, to ask for the professional keynote speakers, especially to Dr. Willy Adrian Renandia, to Dr. Amrah Mahbub, to Professor Anita Lee, and to Bapak Ribut Wahyudi, and to Ibu Anita Triastuti to collaborate with our research agenda in the upcoming years. We are waiting for the academic collaboration. And before we come to the closing ceremony, I would like to announce the best papers that we have selected internally. We have collaborated with the international internal reviewers. So here we are. Congratulations to Pak Afif Ifanul Muslimin. Congratulations to Ratih Laili Nurjana. Congratulations to Bakis Hussein et al. Congratulations to Muhammad Rafiq Tanjung. And those 4 presenters are categorized as best papers. Once again, congratulations, and we are waiting for your next contribution to the upcoming ICON-ELT 2024. Once again, thank you for your participation in this conference. We hope that you have found it informative, engaging, and inspiring. By saying Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin, I officially close the 4th International Conference on English Language Teaching 2023. See you at the 5th International Conference on English Language Teaching 2024. The last I say, Wallahul muwafiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mari di akhir sesi ini kita tutup dengan doa, karena panitia sudah melaksanakan kegiatannya dengan sangat maksimal, kemudian pesertanya juga begitu, kemudian dari presenter Pak Ahmad Mahbub is always inspiring and leading to our religions. Jadi knowledge is not the end. Then how useful knowledge to the people or our community is much more important. Okay, let's start to ask who are Muslim by reciting Al-Fatihah. For others, you can pray based on your faith then. Ila hadir Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ali baitihi ajma'in wa kulliyatin salihah. Al-Fatihah. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Hamdan syakirin, hamdan na'imin, hamdan yu'afil kafi wa mazidah. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wa 'azimi sultanik. Allahumma shalli ala nuril anwar wa sirril asrar wa tiryaqil aghyar wa fitahi babil yasar. Sayyidina Muhammadin al-Mukhtar wa alil adhar wa ashabil akhyar. Adadani ma'ali wa afdalih. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una wahdina subul salam. Allahumma a'inna ala dzikrika wa syukrika wa husni ibadatik. Allahumma ya Allah, Berilah kami ilmu yang manfaat, ilmu yang berkah untuk kehidupan kami, ilmu yang berkah untuk masyarakat Indonesia khususnya dan dunia umumnya. Allahumma rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Wa sallallahu alaihi wasallam Muhammadin nabiyil ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Alvan, to lead us to have a prayer at the end of our session of the conference. Well, Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the very end of our conference agenda. We would like to say thank you, and thank you very much for all the keynote speakers and also invited speakers who have contributed to our conferences and make this conference becomes very success. And also thank you very much for the presenters and also participants for your active participations during the conference from the beginning in the pre-workshop session and then opening until the end of our conference. Thank you for the Department of English Education, the chairpersons of ICON-ELT 2023, Ibu Dr. Kurniasi, and the committee who have prepared and worked very, very hard for the success of our agenda. For the operator, could you please to shoot your camera to Ibu Fitri behind, because she is the person who make our agenda run smoothly. Can you please, Mas Mansur, di-shoot ke Bu Fitri di belakang? Okay, give applause for Ibu Fitri. Amazing. Thank you very much. Ya, ini sudah bekerja keras ya tadi untuk buat recap juga. Thank you. And special thanks to our co-host partners, University Teknologi Malaysia, University Teknologi Mara Malaysia, Universitas Islam Lamongan, Universitas Wiralodra Indramayu, Universitas Hashim As'ari Jombang. Also, thanks to our journal partners, Javel, Chills, Fellas, LET, and also Endure Me. And also our deep gratitude sends to the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, Republic of Indonesia for your support. Thank you once again, everyone. And we look forward for your active participations and also contributions to our upcoming conference in 2024. Makan ikan lele ditemani Dr. Ahmar. Cakep. Di warung tani untuk makan siang. Thank you very much for attending this seminar. See you again in 2024 in Malang. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ahmar. After this, maybe you can have a campus tour accompanied by Pak Eko as you have planned before. And then after that, we will have such kind of not private meeting, yes, lunch. Okay, thank you very much for on-site participants, Ibu Dr. Hema, Ibu Dr. Rika from University Teknologi Malaysia for coming. It's always a pleasure to have you here in Universitas Islam Malang, and hopefully we can next year come to Malaysia. Amin. Thank you so much Pak Aris for coming ya dari Gontor. Thank you jauh-jauh ke sini ke Universitas Islam Malang. Hopefully it becomes an impressive moment with all the committee here. Thank you for the students of English Education Department for supporting us from the first day and also the second day. Thank you very much.
Bapak Ibu, let's have a group picture together. Mungkin Prof Hema and team, let's foto bareng. Ayo, ayo. Mumpung belum selesai. Pak Ahmad, let's have foto bareng. Let's have a picture session together. Bapak Ibu mari sama-sama, bareng-bareng. Monggo. Adik-adik mahasiswa langsung ke atas. Adik-adik mahasiswa langsung ke atas. Ya. Iya, partisipan. Monggo semuanya. Please. Come. Ya. Pak Wawan, Pak Warek dari Unitas Macung, monggo foto bersama. Ayo ke tengah, iya, enggak apa. Pak Zem, monggo semua partisipan. Teman-teman duta, monggo. Ibu-ibu partisipan, monggo, monggo Bu. Bu Fepti, MC kita. Ayo teman-teman duta kalau mau ikut, monggo. Ayo. Ayo, hurry up teman-teman, hurry up. Hurry up, hurry up. Agak saya atur ya. Agak geser ke sana, agak geser dikit. Mungkin ibu-ibu ada yang sebelah sana ya, ibu-ibu sebelah sana. Monggo, monggo, monggo. Oke, agak mepet. Oke. Formal session. Freestyle session. Thumbs up. ICON-ELT CN5. Budura. Saya bentar. Budura kalau melbu. Ayo. C5, ICON-ELT 5. Okay, thank you. Give applause for all of us.